Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Town of Camden Select Board meeting for July 9th, 2019. And with that, we'll enter into our published agenda. And as always, we start our meetings with, does anybody here have any public input on a non-agenda item? Anybody want to speak to something that's not on the agenda? Not, ooh, there's one.
I'd like it to be noted that I believe the town bell is ringing 8 minutes late.
You know,
I noticed that last night as well. I think you're correct.
You are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct.
Joey.
Thanks for paying attention. Okay, thank you. Not seeing other hands, we're going to revert. Okay, go ahead. Be more interesting what I'm going to say. I'd like to act on the board minutes for May 21st, 2019 and June 18th, 2019.
Okay, shoot.
Anybody have them?
I have no corrections for the one on May 21st. I was not here on the 18th, so I can't comment on that.
Okay.
I second Mark. Both counts. Yeah,
Was that a motion?
I think Alice, oh no, we can do the motion, second, then discussion, I suppose.
Yeah, we should.
Is that what you want to do?
Yes, I do. Unless anybody has any comments.
Second?
I haven't heard a motion yet.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for May 21st, 2019.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes. Actually, I don't think that is the right way to do it, because then you have to amend that, but either way. They're just, now I can't, which one is the one where where Jeremy talks about the tannery and the website?
I think it's the
21st.
21st.
Okay. It was maybe just, now I need to find it, but not quite clear that he put on there the reports from both tannery work groups. Where's Ken? I can't see where I'm, oh, there, I was like telling Sarah. Jeremy sent me a quick note just saying that that wasn't clear. I'm trying to find it for you. That there have been 2 rounds of tannery work groups. One was called the Tannery Redevelopment Work Group. That was the older one. I don't know, can I just send her proposed language, or can Jeremy? It's a very small thing, but Jeremy wanted me to bring it up.
You don't know what it is?
I'm trying
Take your
really
time.
hard to.
Well, why don't we revert to...
And then the
why-
other thing-
If you want to look, we can revert to discussing June 18th while you're looking. The other meeting minutes.
Okay.
Want to do that?
Is that the one where we did wastewater? Or is that also the 21st?
Let me just check, hold on. I don't think it was, but I'm looking.
Okay, so I found it. Jared, he stated he also included the guiding principles from the Tannery Working Group and their recommendations. I think he just wanted to clarify that both rounds of Tannery Work Group recommendations were on there.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
problem, no
I know it
problem.
seems like a small thing. Then with I just think we need to, when somebody opposes, when something isn't unanimous, I think it said 410 for
Correct.
the wastewater, was it not charter change, but I just think we need to specify who it was that voted against.
Okay.
So that,
Okay.
in this case, it was me, but just as a general habit, so you should be able to look at that and know how each person voted.
That makes sense.
It does. And that's it.
That's it? So with those 2 comments, do I hear a motion? Or actually revise the motion?
I revised the motion to include the comments that Allison made.
Second.
All's in favor? 5-0. On the June 12th, June 18th minutes, there are only 3 of us here, so there's only 3 of us can comment on it. I didn't see anything in June 18th. Taylor or Allison?
I don't have any comments, so I move that we accept the minutes, the board minutes from June 18, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? All's in favor? 3-0. With that, we will move to select board reports. Anybody want to start?
Yeah, I'll start real quick. Just a brief update, the inland mooring working group met again last night. I need to connect with Paul Leeper, the chairman of the committee, but the hope, I think, is that we'll have a draft of where we are in the ordinance recommendations to get to Audra and staff to review to see where we go moving forward. And I'll report back when we have more. That's it.
Going straight to me?
Yeah. why not?
Okay. First off, I missed the last meeting. I was out of town on business, so I wanted to thank everybody. This is my first meeting since the election, and I've been reelected to the position, so I'd like to thank everyone for the hopefully confidence in my ability to continue the job. So I appreciate that. The one other thing I wanted to mention is, and it was brought up quickly at the last meeting, but over Father's Day weekend, we had our first Jazz in June festival, and it was a tremendous success. I went to almost all the events, and they were tremendously well attended, great events. Weather was terrific, which helped a lot. And we have already committed to doing Jazz in June next year, same weekend. And with learning some of the things we did this weekend, it'll be improved next year. It's something that originally was thought about, how do we match what happens with SIF and bring more people into town in a time when people are not coming early summer. But it's as good for the local residents as it is for tourists, and it was a wonderful success. So thank for everybody that attended, that involved themselves, that worked on it. It was a great thing for the town. Looking forward to it again next year.
Thanks, Mark. Do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I'll go. So, not a committee report, but this is a photo from down by, does everybody know where this is? Harbor Park. And as I've been spending a lot of time down at the harbor during this fish migration season, it's been interesting to watch the tides, and this isn't anything that doesn't happen during the rest of the year. But, once in a while we show these dramatic photos of what it looks like when when the seawall gets overtopped in Harbor Park. And I think sometimes there's a perception that this is a really rare event when it's combined with storm surge and all kinds of things. This was just a run-of-the-mill, this was an 11.9 foot high tide with no storm surge. And if you look at the tide charts, you can go on and see what the tides are predicted to be for, months and months out. That's a very common occurrence. So this week, several times, a lot of the time it does happen at night, but the whole Harbor Park walkway is completely unwalkable. There were fish swimming around in Harbor Park. The seawall is getting ravaged. So it's like just abundantly clear that something different has to happen there when we fix the seawall. Let's see the next thing. There has been a slow burning fire in the landfill for several days now. It's not known exactly where it is or how long it's been burning. It's under control, but the landfill it was closed today. It was closed some over the weekend. The staff has done a phenomenal job just even keeping that place open. A lot of places probably would have closed, but if you can try to keep your demo not at the landfill for now, that'll be best, because they might not, as soon as they can start taking it again, they will, but you would want to call ahead. We also hired.
Excuse me, it's hot in here.
Oh,
Sorry,
yes.
sorry.
A new manager at the transfer station, so that is really exciting. Baridi, Audra, can you
Nico Cayley.
Nico Cayley is going to be joining us, and he's really a fantastic, dynamic guy that we're really excited to have as part of the community, and you'll be hearing more about him, but we're excited to welcome him. I spoke on Islesboro over the weekend they invited me to come and speak about the McGonagall River and actually some of this seawall stuff, and just some of the different ways that Camden is trying to look harder at the river and the harbor there. So that was really enjoyable. I hadn't been there for years. It was interesting, all of the internet connection there is so fantastic, and they have a preschool that is probably the only affordable childcare around. A lot of people have started living on Islesboro just for the preschool. So that was really interesting. And then the fire, I've gotten a bunch of comments from people concerned about the fireworks and then the fire on Curtis Island. So for years, we've become aware that different people have tried to express concerns over, depending on the way the wind's blowing, Curtis Island is just sort of showered in embers. And the people that are out there try to, stamp it out as best they can, but they've repeatedly expressed concern. And then, so this time the fireworks were kind of magnified, and the wind was going in the wrong direction from Curtis Island's perspective. And so that actually did start a fire. And it was definitely scary for the people out there, and I've just heard a lot of concern about it. So we've known we need to do something about that. And then the other concern with the fireworks is, and I did bring in some of the debris that gets collected. And this, is just a small portion. This is actually not the stuff that washes up on shore, but does anybody want to? I don't know what kind of chemicals. Part of it is that I don't actually.
No, I do. I wouldn't worry about it.
Too late for me. This is what's raining down on Curtis Island. So that's kind of shocking to me. And then there have been other reports of, some things do actually go in the water. So I don't have a solution there, but I do think it's something that we need to really look hard at and see, are there options for, what kind of fireworks we can have? Do we know what's in all this stuff? Some of it just looks like, oh, well, it's just a paper bag, but it's not. It's also just a lot of plastic, and we should probably scrutinize that just a little bit more. And that's it for me.
Just quickly, sorry, before I forget, on the landfill is closed, but household trash drop off.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, recycling and household trash, refrigerators, TVs, printers, bicycles, all of that stuff can still go. And some of the stuff that you would normally maybe put in the landfill can actually just go in your yellow bag and be burned at EcoMaine. So it's mostly for the big contractors to consider.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yes.
Thanks, Allison, and I agree. Just a brief update. 2 select board meetings ago, we had a long discussion about the brown tail moth and its trouble that it's caused, and I can show more of it here. But just the good news part of it, I got another call today from Doug Johnson, who is tree keepers here in Camden, and he's been speaking with the State Forestry Division. They have spent some time in 3 towns at least. I'm aware of Bristol, Rockport, and Camden. And the very good news is apparently this, as we hoped, this rain has created a fungus on the trees, which is killing the cocoons. And right now in Camden, there's a substantial kill of the cocoons in the oak tree. So thanks, nature. Yeah, because it's not been fun, as many of you know. Okay, with that, Audra, do you have anything you'd like to add on your reports? No, okay. So then it would, completing that sector of the agenda, I'd like to adjourn as select board and convene as wastewater commissioners.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn as select board and reconvene as wastewater.
Second.
Those in favor? 5-0. Okay, under the wastewater commissioners, the first action item is to discuss the approval of the fiscal year 20 wastewater department budget. David?
Yes. So I can say the one big change that you'll notice from the last time we discussed the budget to this time is that we've included a line, I believe we called it.
The reserve line?
Yeah, a $100,000 reserve, and that was in anticipation of, the work that's going to be done to redevelop the plant and try to, gradually increase rates there so that ratepayers aren't feeling the hit all at once. And that also gives us some funding to pay the interest on a construction bridging loan that we're hoping that we're going to be ready to move forward with this year.
To pay the interest in FY '20.
Yes.
It won't be much.
No. No, so that money will be more than enough to pay for any interest on a bridging loan that we would take out.
I&I reserve wasn't carried forward into '20. Is there a reason? Looking at 60/20 capital reserves.
Oh, why there isn't anything added in?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, the issue there, if you look ahead, Rick is doing a bunch of repaving,
Oh,
and as it turns out, those streets all have clay pipe on them, so we're going to do a lot of pipe replacement this year. So I was a little concerned about keeping, I've been putting about 100,000 away in reserves each year in the different lines.
Right.
I didn't do that this year because we're going to spend so much
on the
on
pipe.
projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
You go ahead and add it back in and just,
I-
so does that mean we're not going to do any work on the I&I?
Oh, you're talking about the I&I?
Yeah, it was I&I only.
But that's just the
Right,
reserve. That's
right.
the
If you
reserve
look
fund.
down, 6156, 6363, we've got 173,000 in I&I reserves.
Where is it?
Oh,
It's down toward
okay,
the
okay.
bottom of my page, anyway, on that same page.
The same page?
6156.
So it's 173 is the balance, we're just not going to add to it in fiscal year '20.
Exactly, exactly. The only thing I added to, if you see there, is 30,000 for the collection system.
Yes,
Because it's going to be hit pretty hard because of all these road projects.
okay. Okay. And this is a total budget of about almost 1.3 million, 1,286, correct? The total expense, correct?
That's correct, yes. Yep, that's everything.
So are we setting the rates also?
Yes, yep, and they're going up because of the $100,000 bond reserve. We are proposing an increase this year of 8.11%.
To $6.23 per 100 cubic feet?
It takes an
Correct.
8% increase to raise $100,000?
No, I think that's the whole budget. I mean, the whole budget has gone up 8.1%, is that correct?
No, the budget's only
That-
gone up.
The total wastewater expense is $1,286,680, 8.11%.
Versus 1.19 million last year.
So when we say the budget has gone up, then that's what the rate increase will correspond to?
Yes, yep.
If it goes up 8%, then the rates go up 8%.
Otherwise, you don't cover the revenue. to
So I
cover
guess
it.
that my question is still the same then? About, that's what $100,000 does to the,
I don't know that the $100,000 is the only increase. I don't think it is.
No, that's right. If you look at the
Pearl-
first
Pearl Street
page.
pump manholes added 140,000. The Cobb Hill Road culvert replacement added 37,500. There are other changes to the budget beyond the $100,000.
I'm just trying to think of the rate increase that we predicted based on the actions a few weeks ago.
That'd be about what was it, 40-something percent, once the project's done and we're
Right,
paying for the financing on the project.
yes, so.
That was all things being equal. That wasn't factoring in that there would also be increases based on projects, different projects that
Right.
needed to be done. So I'm wondering how far this if we're going to raise rates 8%, is that going to get us, is that really 8/40ths of, or what we need to get to be
To
having it all funded by users? I'm wondering if we need to
So-
raise
so
rates
100
more
so-
than
we
we,
raise more to
So-
complete the project?
The difference, just to answer this question, the difference between the budget from last year to this year is it's an increase of $96,500 overall. So it's about $100,000 equals an 8% increase.
But but that's a mix of increases and decreases.
Yes.
One of which increase
Yes.
is the $100,000 reserve for the project.
Right.
But if you're asking
So
the
if
question.
you didn't have that $100,000 reserve that we put in here.
Budget would've gone down.
It would have been down or flat, yeah.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
okay. So if we did this every year,
Yes.
It might not go up that fast, but we'll see. But it's not over. This amount won't cover the project, if that's what you're asking.
no, I know
think-
8%
I think
won't,
Allison's
but
just trying to get to that sort of gradual stage
we
increase.
need to be at the,
I would say, we've got probably about 3 years to start ramping this up. So next year would be more like 200, 250,000. The year after that, it would be, we'd be putting away even
so
more.
we'd raise rates 8% this year, 16% next year.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily
20%.
be 16 because it's the compounding, the 8%.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah. Right. But also, next year, we're going to be paying significantly more on our, our bridging loan, our construction bridging loan, because hopefully by next year, we'll be actually into, yes. Yeah.
So I guess I still think that we should raise rates more than
8%.
8%, because we know where we stand in relationship to other towns, and why are we, if we're, I don't know, I guess why are we waiting to, why not do some of the bigger increases now and the smaller increases later on? It just feels like we're allowing people to live in denial for longer. We just don't want to have that conversation now, or?
Well, you can.
It's all up to all of you,
Well, you can.
how you want to do it.
You can, but you can actually compound, it will increase beyond 8% in the out years because the construction amount will be a lot higher. The $100,000 now put in there will not be used in this current year for the projects. It's too much. It won't. It'll continue, probably about 75,000 of that will probably continue into the following year. So whatever we add there, it's going to mitigate that a little bit. So we're trying to stay, I think 8%, at the moment, 8% is ahead of the curve. Now, it's a good point, where it'll go in the second, third, and fourth years. The idea would be in the fourth year that the increase in rates would be at a point where, at the end of the project, we've used our bridge loan, and we would have paid out that last year the same amount that we will continue to pay out to pay off the USDA 30-year bond.
Do we have the ability to look at an estimated increase schedule over the next 4 years so we can?
Yeah.
So we can say, okay, this year it's 8.1%, but we're expecting that in year 2 and 3, it'll be X and Y. Obviously, that might change slightly, but just to give us an idea looking into the future so that next year we're not having the same
We'd have to-
conversation.
Let's do a construction cash flow.
Sure.
We can do that.
Yeah, and this year, we're in a little bit of a tricky position with this because we're kind of at the process now where we're securing all of our financing and grants and everything. So we're still
Right.
kind of figuring out exactly
We're not sure yet.
how much and when.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should take a look at that for the next out years, but since we're so far ahead of the curve right now, it's probably a little premature to increase it substantially at this point. I think next year and the 2 years after that, we'll be able to project that.
In sludge removal, how confident are we that that's not gonna, really spike based on all the stuff with PFAS? And did we have a quote from Casella that
Well-
is a contract with them that?
Right, yeah, right now, we do have a contract with them. Their costs are going up because they're going to have to do a lot more testing.
Right.
Right now, it's in the infancy of really setting limits. DEP played it real safe for the limits that they set. And there's a trade association that deals with biosolids. They're meeting with DEP. They're going to propose limits that aren't quite so high as, or low, I should say, as DEP's. And that's based on science, that they've done a lot of research. Actually hired a consulting firm, an engineering consulting firm to look at this. This firm does a lot of work for EPA, for example, so they've got a lot of expertise in this type of study.
Do we then go to DEP with that data and suggest that they change their limits?
Right, yeah, the limits they have right now are arbitrary limits that they've set be really protective.
Okay.
And now it's time to spend time looking at the science over the next couple of years, and there's probably going to be a lot more testing. And then, at some point, DEP will set concrete limits.
Sorry, we expect that they'll take that into consideration when they make that decision, the data that private company provides?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Are you talking about solids limits?
Yeah, it's the amount of PFAS in there'll be a certain concentration where you can't land spread it.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah, but in reality, if we have to, we can go to landfill for about the same cost.
I see.
Yeah.
Which landfill?
Pardon me?
To which landfill?
It would be, they take it to Old Town.
Oh. So,
Yeah, any other comments on the budget? Go ahead, Allison.
so the collection system maintenance, why not, with all the collection system issues that we have, why is there nothing else we should be spending money on? You know, all that, what is included in collection system
The 30,000.
maintenance?
That's for things like,
40.
if we do have a piece of collapsed pipe, we have to dig up a section, say 20-foot section of road and replace it. That money's there for things like that, maybe replacing a manhole or fixing a manhole.
It just seems like with
Miscellaneous
all the
things that
issues
come
I've
up.
heard about, there's nothing, it feels like we should budget more and do more.
Yeah, what I'm doing is, bigger projects, I'm putting in capital improvements, because, for example, the Pearl Street project's a $140,000 project. So I wouldn't want to, that O&M line, I really don't want to put $150,000 in that line if some years we only need 30 or 40,000.
Do we have a program where somebody's going out and monitoring and tracking and,
Yes, yeah, we go out, we clean the pipe with our jetter, and we camera, and with the goal of cameraing the entire 17 miles of piping every 5 years, 5-year cycle.
what about like water testing? Do we have to do, is that part of this budget? Like testing of the river and the harbor to try to catch leaks? Would we budget for that here?
I've got money under laboratory, about $8,000 for any supplies. We do the testing ourselves, most of it anyway. There's some things we'd have to send out for. But
Dave,
8,000 has been plenty from year to year.
with the $30,000 in collection system reserve, you're bringing the total reserve to 150, yeah, oh, that's what I saw.
Collection system
No,
maintenance.
maintenance.
Maintenance, I'm sorry, I thought you meant reserves.
Yeah, talking about the O&M budget, yeah,
I have a question.
Yeah.
You say you check the whole system every 5 years.
right.
So in the last 5 years, where are we overall in our infrastructure? What kind of shape are we in?
Yeah, we're roughly 40% clay pipe still, maybe a little bit less now, because we've done some projects in the last, 5, 6 years. And some of it looks like it's brand new, and other parts of it, there's sections that are busted up.
So is this a budget that's workable, so within the next, you're not going to be caught falling behind? Is this a workable budget for you?
Yes, yeah, I think it definitely is.
We constantly are finding places where sewage is escaping the system or water is infiltrating in, and it's not just people's basements. So it just seems strange to me that there's only a maximum of $40,000 worth of work. I mean, why do we have so many, if we're looking at the whole system every 5 years, why do we still have so many questions about where these problems are originating?
Well, when we look at the pipe, we're not necessarily looking at the source of fresh water coming into the system. That's where you really need to look at the properties to see if.
Right, so what about the leaks? Instead, the
Infiltration
outflow,
into the system?
Out of the system, or exfiltration, or
Well,
when sewage ends up in the river or
right,
elsewhere.
right. Yeah, that becomes more difficult to determine that. Obviously, if we come across a pipe that's broken or separated, then we would fix that.
Like the smoke testing and the dye testing and the,
Right, we've tested all of the system, and that did show us some issues with exfiltration coming out of the,
right.
Which we
But then it
fixed.
seems like all those reports always have more stuff that says, and this and this and this is what should be done. The data set was not robust enough to really draw conclusions. We recommend, extensive additional testing here, 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 and here. I guess I'd just like to see us do that.
yeah, we've been testing for bacteria every summer, and we're doing that again this summer, trying to pinpoint places where there's a source of bacteria contamination and going after it. And we found quite a few over the,
Right.
I mean, we found one last year where there was a sewer lateral going right into the stormwater system. So we're looking at the stormwater system as well.
I guess I know that you're doing some stuff, I just wish we would do more, and I think we should budget more, and it should be okay, we have to hire somebody part-time. It just seems like a very big problem when we know sewage is escaping into the environment.
Yeah, and like I say, we've accomplished things the last 4 or 5 years here, and before my time, actually. And,
Could we accomplish more if we had more money and more staff resources?
I don't know, we're checking a lot of storm drains, for example, looking for pretty much the major storm drains. We've been testing those for years now.
Good
Okay.
question. Yeah, did you have any, Taylor?
Dave, is the goal to replace all of the clay pipe, period, or are you just replacing it as you're finding broken sections?
Well, if the clay pipe looks pristine, then I'd say you really don't need to replace it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're really focusing on clay pipe that's in bad shape.
Will some of the clay pipe last longer than other pipe, or so we just want to wait until everything breaks and that's all?
No, certainly not.
I know we don't, I didn't mean to say it that way. It all needs to be replaced, right, or not? Can it?
Well, not necessarily. There's some pipe, like I say, that looks pristine. It's clay pipe. But I think a lot of it depends on how it was installed.
In the couplings, they're manual couplings, they're not mechanical couplings.
Right.
So the pipe goes like this, it doesn't go like this. It's a clay pipe as a,
Are you saying that makes it better sometimes?
no, it's
or-
worse, it's worse. What can happen there, in anybody's home, you wind up with tree roots growing into the pipe. And that's classic for clay-type piping, it's not.
Yeah, that's
hellishly-
definitely a problem.
It's not hellishly efficient.
Right, that's the anti-clay pipe argument, but I was looking for the pro-clay pipe
It
argument.
ain't broke, don't fix it.
Wait until we detect something in the storm drains.
Yeah, I don't know how many
Well,
miles. we have out there.
Elm Street's a good example. That pipe has got to be 100 years old, and we TV'd that, and it looks like it was installed yesterday.
Yeah.
A lot of it is, what did they use for base? Did it have good gravel underneath it, or was that material full of rocks? So if you get some movement, all of a sudden now the rock is coming up against the pipe and cracking it. That's what it really boils down to. And some places, you've got offsets where the clay pipe does this, and, that's not good either. So that would be changed out, or
Yep.
if the offset's not too bad, we can line it instead of replacing it.
Last question for me anyway. Are there any other changes in the budget that you would like to see that haven't been covered?
No, this is
Okay.
pretty ideal.
Twist his arm to spend more money,
There
but he
you go.
doesn't,
Well,
it's not taking the bait.
I think I need to point out that the reserve balance total is about $750,000, including the collection system reserves, which is $153,000 of that amount.
Right.
So we have substantial reserves for stuff that can happen if we need it in their budget. The total reserves out.
I think we should spend more on the problems.
I
that we-
agree.
Well,
We had the money to spend.
the I&I reserve is 173,000. So if something comes up where we say, geez, we found a bad spot,
Yep.
you've got plenty of money to tackle it.
Same thing with the collection system.
Tell
We're going to
Abby to
find
look
it.
hard.
Yep.
Look hard.
Yep, we'll keep looking.
right.
We're not going to give up.
Any other comments? Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the total wastewater budget for $1,286,680.
Second.
Discussion. All's in favor? 5-0. You have a budget. Thanks, Dave, on that one. The
Yep.
second item on the wastewater commissioner is discussion of our continuing I&I enforcement action. Audra, do you want to lead the little history of that?
So I'd say that the discussion you were just having sort of a perfect segue into what more can we do to get, fresh water out of the system and stop sanitary sewer overflows. So we're kind of at a point now where I think that we've given a lot of notice to property owners about the surveys. We've given a lot of notice to property owners where we found issues where they actually tie into the sewer system. So I think, now is the time where we need to start taking some action. And that's been made even more urgent by a conversation that Dave recently had with the DEP. And I'll let you talk about that a little bit more.
Yes, yeah, let me just say to start out, the DEP is very happy with what we've been doing, the progress we made and everything that we've done in the last 5 or 6 years. But that being said, we still have had sanitary sewer overflows at the C Street and a few at the Bayview pump station during big rain events or snow melt. And so, these have added up over the years, and periodically DEP will go say, okay, you've had X number of violation over these number of years. We're to the point now, they're happy with what we're doing, but they want to know when the closure will happen, where we no longer violate. And so they're going to propose a consent agreement. I sat down with them just before the week after, 2 weeks ago. And so they're crafting a consent agreement. What that does, it'll become a consent decree, which is a court order that says you'll have to hit these milestones on this date. So there's a bit more pressure, if you will, to get this under control and stop having these violations.
Do we have an idea how many residences are not compliant at this point?
There's about 131 that still need to be inspected, or we found a problem, they need to be fixed.
What's the ratio there?
We've got over 1,800, it's like 1,860.
The ratio of people that have said you just can't come and look at my basement versus the people that have said yes. How many of those are known problems versus people just saying you can't look? Which I understand there's a high likelihood that those people are not compliant, the ones that.
How many have no problem?
Not, so how, in terms of, some people have said you just can't look.
Right.
And some have said, yes, you can, and you found a problem, but they haven't fixed it yet. So what's the,
What are the numbers?
Well, some haven't.
Yeah, okay,
responded at all.
it's, let's see,
or the
Six-
non-responses?
yeah, 69 non-responses, so what's the difference there?
And by non-response, does that mean no,
Nothing.
that was a no, or that was just a, we
No
can't tell
response.
if they even read the request?
Well, you can tell when you put certified mail out, because the way that the post office stamps it tells you that they got the notice and they never picked up the certified mail.
So there's 69 non-responses, and the rest, we have known issues out of the 181.
Well, then you've got another 62 that have problems and that they haven't been fixed yet.
So of all of this whole stack received notices of violation? Of all of these?
Yes.
All 100 and,
131 of them.
okay, all 131. They received notices of violations when?
When they went out?
November?
I think they went out at different.
It's been,
It's been a while. It's been over 6 months.
last fall, that's right.
Have
Yeah.
we instituted any of the fines yet?
No, we have
That's
not.
what we're here to discuss tonight.
Yeah,
because,
that
the next step
takes,
is-
you'd actually have to take them to court.
Right. So that's where we are at this point.
Yes.
We've given plenty of notice of violation, which on the books, was it $100 a day, I think, something like that, or if it's actually enforced, it's a big number, whatever.
Yeah, the minimum is
Whatever the
$100 a
violation
day.
is, it's a big number. We
We need to change our charter so we can automatically, or our interlocal agreement, or whichever document needs to be changed so we can automatically find these people.
Or put it in the bill. But right now,
I'm not sure we can do that because it's state statute.
Oh, it's the state?
Yeah.
I thought it was our
Yeah.
own rules that were
No, we
stopping
can,
us.
but we're entering into a consent decree with DEP. They can do the same thing with us instead of going to court.
Right, so at this point,
Yeah,
we have a
still
choice to,
bunch of legal fees.
well, we can sit and watch again and keep pressing, or we can file a class action suit
A class action suit?
Yeah, I
Against-
wouldn't-
No, that,
against all, a whole group, the whole group.
reverse class action suit?
The whole, yeah, well, what I'm saying is against all 100 and,
Make them
Something.
operate as a group.
Multiple defendant.
No, I mean, we're going to have to individually send notice out to everyone saying that they're subject to the fines. And then,
that's what a notice violation does.
well, I mean, now we're following through with
No,
it.
it's like, it's the same thing as the Airbnb thing a little bit. It just takes so much energy to send these people letters and deal with their lawyers, and it ends up, sometimes we end up losing in the long run.
Do you have a recommendation?
We should do it, yeah, we
That we
should
need to move
crack
forward
down
with this,
on-
particularly since we're in a point where the state is going to be having us enter into a consent decree because, this is a lot of the source of that
Moving
problem.
forward, being actually filing suits or letting them know that we intend to take them to court unless
already-
they rectify it within a
What is
certain
the
amount of
next
time?
step recommended?
So after the notice of violation, wouldn't we send another letter just saying that they're not in compliance and that they'll receive a fine of 100 to 250,000 a day?
I think you could do that. Typically, the next step would be to start chipping away in court. You might send notice to them and say you have to appear at such and such a day in court, and, I would think they'd be able to settle before they ever
Right.
go to court.
Would you,
Has Bill made a recommendation on this?
Well, I think that the next step is to get Bill to draft something up that gets sent out to everyone.
Okay.
Can we also ask Bill to let us, I am fully in support of penalizing the people that haven't. I'm not trying to say, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't do it. It's more just, why can't we add something onto their bill? The fee for not having complied. I think it's just like a clear answer about why we can't add 50%, 25% to their bill automatically.
And we did talk about that a while ago. I don't remember exactly what the outcome was with, so anyway, I'll speak to.
That's why I feel like it was our sewer ordinance.
as I recall, Bill was suggesting that, we file a notice of violation, which has, I forget the exact number per day of penalty, but the next step was to take a batch and take it to court.
Yes, he said take a number
batch,
of them,
A batch.
Because we couldn't do this other thing. It's,
right.
Well, let me tell you a story about that. That one Maine town actually tried to do that. There was a resident that had fresh water, sump pumps, floor drains going into the sewer system. They said, okay, we're going to charge you X amount per gallon to treat that, and it came out to $400 per quarter, and that resident pays $400 a quarter to put their fresh water into the sewer system.
Doesn't solve the problem.
And it doesn't solve the problem, that's right. So we have to be careful that way, that we might have some people that say, hey, I'm just going to pay it and put it in the sewer.
yeah, but in the meantime, we've collected a ton of revenue that we can use for something.
Is the court action to force them to pay the fine or to force them to fix the problem?
It's to impose the fine.
Which would logically result in them fixing the problem.
the
So
fine gets
it seems
higher.
like the action is to get Bill to recommend the next action. I don't really think another letter is going to do it.
Yeah, I think we're just moving forward with,
decisive action.
really, it's
I
just
thought we
getting.
already agreed to do, like, to
that's what we
track down what's the next step.
Yeah, the question was what the batch would be.
I think the last thing that we did was publishing the list of
Yeah,
people
we
that.
did in the
yeah.
paper. Yeah, so
The
get
shaming list.
Bill's recommendation as the next step in terms of legal action against it, whatever select group he recommends. All right.
Spread the word, everyone.
Yeah, pay attention, this is big stuff. It's causing problems, so on that basis, let's just get that information and decide ASAP about, we've sat long enough, given people long enough time. Twice we've done notices and twice no responses. All right,
It's been more than twice.
okay,
That's what it feels like.
it is,
It's been a
it's been a
long
year.
process.
It's been a year.
Yeah.
Okay, with that,
Is that list still on the website?
I don't
Should've put it up there.
believe so.
List back up on the website?
we can make a fresh list.
Sure we can,
List,
sure
yeah.
we can.
Reading it to you when you open the website.
Right, we can make it the screensaver on the
With that,
television
if
channel.
there are no more questions, I
Play.
need a motion to adjourn as wastewater commissioners
We
and,
have number
have
3,
one more
plan
item.
upgrades.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to rush you. Dave, go home. No, the last item is
Almost.
discussion on the plant upgrades use of the existing sludge press building.
Yes, I wanted to pass something by you here. We've started the engineering on the plant upgrades.
Right.
And as it turns out, the pumps that are in the existing press building, we can move all those to the new press building. And so that essentially becomes empty. We'd still, because we're making changes to that building, we'd have to bring it up to code.
Yeah.
And Wright Pierce is predicting about $250,000 to do that.
That's going to depend on its use.
Right, even.
Let's get it listed on the
If you use it
National
for
Register.
storage, even, we've got to put a significant amount of money into it. Just because it's not meeting code for like the upstairs is very narrow stairway, it's not up to code, that type of thing. So what I'd like you to propose and think about it is that we demo that building. We then will have a piece of real estate for some other piece of equipment or say a storage that we could really use, like maybe a 3-bay garage, wood structure. You could build one for $45,000, $50,000.
We already have a ton of storage that we're not
Yeah.
really using in the most efficient, I don't know, some of the things that are stored there. I'm totally, I thought this was you told me it was the opposite.
No, yeah, I think I'd have to know a little bit more information on why this is going to cost a quarter. How many square feet is this?
I do not know. I can
Roughly,
get that for you.
Is it 20, 30,000? Well, whatever it
Yeah,
is. That cost per
probably
square,
less than-
the
might
cost
be
per
even less
square
than
foot to
that.
bring it up
Yeah.
to code for use as any kind of, just a general use, that sounds awfully high to me.
How does the use of this plant fold into the upgraded, the upgraded plant once that's completed? Is it-
Yeah, that'll be emptied out,
Yep,
that building,
There's no future use for it once we're done with the upgrades.
right?
correct.
Yeah. And, we'll have to, the $250,000 roughly for the renovations, and then, of course, we have to heat the building, so we don't end up with a mildew or mold problem, which happens on abandoned buildings.
It just, there's a chicken and egg thing going on here. If you don't define a use, you really can't define the code upgrade and what it's going to cost. Because if it were storage, or
Yeah.
it's not $250,000 to upgrade that building, if you wanted to do that. I'm not saying you want to do that.
Yeah.
And I just don't like seeing a building torn down just because of a number that we haven't pegged yet. So I think we should keep discussing it, maybe, and look at uses, and maybe bring Wright Pierce in at a certain point in time, and say, what are you thinking? And see, and I would
We can do
like to-
that.
And part of that would be to see, I would like to see a cost breakdown and what use they're proposing and why these dollars are what they are. That's not that big a building.
Yeah, what we can do is have them do some more engineering.
Yep.
And see what that looks like.
Yep.
And
Yep.
see,
Yeah, we're in no hurry to
where the
tear.
money's coming from.
We're in no hurry to tear it down. We haven't built a new one yet, so.
Yeah, the thing is, we are getting into engineering now, so we want to know exactly they need to know exactly what they're going to engineer for.
Of course.
Or to.
Of course.
Yeah.
But there's no longer a question about the new sludge building. That's part of the project, for the new equipment. So this, as you said, is going to be an empty building. If we left it empty for 5 years, nothing's going to happen to it if nobody goes in it. So I think we can discuss it over the project ASAP and see what we want to do or not do with it, and what it would cost to do, what we think we want to do with it.
And in the meantime, I can talk to code enforcement.
Yep.
Have them look at the building.
Yep.
And say, okay, if we take everything out of here.
Yep.
So at that point, we were renovating.
Yep.
And see what they say, what the minimum
It's a good
things we
idea.
would have to do to that building.
Great idea.
Sounds
Great
good.
idea. Thanks for bringing it up, though. It's a good question.
Okay, that was it.
Thank you, David. Now we can take a motion.
Make a motion, we adjourn as wastewater commissioners and reform as the select board.
All's in favor? 5-0. Next on the agenda, we have 5 items on the consent agenda, which are consideration renewal license, victual license for Cuzzies, Elms of Camden, Hawthorne Inn, the Jack Bar, Timbercliff, and Zoot Coffee. The second item is consideration of renewal lodging licenses for Elms of Camden, Hawthorne Inn, and Timbercliff. The third is the approval of a request of the library for a banner, permit, and food vendor for Harbor Arts and Book Fair on July 13th and 14th, which I understand is a food truck. Four is a request for the annual block party for Central Street on Saturday, July 20th from 5 to 9 p.m. And lastly, the fifth, request for annual block party for Maple Street on Friday, July 26th from 4 to 11 p.m. Do I hear any objections to the select board on these 5 items? Not hearing objections, these items are hereby adopted. Next item on the agenda will be 2 public hearings. The first is for public hearing for liquor license renewal for 3 establishments, and the second item, a public hearing for special amusement permit for Cuzzies at 21 Bay Street. The purpose of the public hearing will be to discuss these permits and licenses. The board will hear first from the applicant if he'd like to speak, and then comments from any persons from the public who would like to speak. We please ask you to come to the podium and give us your name and address, please. And if we would also ask that all comments would be directed through myself so we can channel communication. After all the public individuals have had an opportunity to speak, I will close the public hearing, and the select board, 5 of us, will then deliberate on each of the licenses as we go through it. So with that said, I'd like to start with the first public hearing liquor license renewal request for the Drouthy Bear at 50 Elm Street. Is there anybody here who would like to speak to this license renewal in favor of, opposed? We just want to say they like the Drouthy Bear. Not hearing any, I will close the public hearing on the Drouthy Bear and revert to the select board for action.
I would make a motion that we, unless, I think if we're ready for a motion.
Yes, that's be
I
fine.
would make a motion that we approve the renewal of the liquor license for the Drouthy Bear at 50 Elm Street.
Second.
All's in favor? 5-0. The second is for the Hawthorne Inn at 9 High Street. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for this license permit? Against it? Just want to talk, please? Not hearing it? Not hearing any, which is good. Then I would close the public hearing portion and revert to select board for action.
I will make a motion that we approve the renewal of the liquor license for the Hawthorne Inn at 9 High Street.
Second. All's in favor? 5-0. I'm sorry, hit my microphone here. The third liquor license renewal is for Cuzzies at 21 Bayview Street. Would anybody from the public like to speak to this license permit for or against? I see 2 hands. I'll take one at a time. Sarah? I saw 2 hands. I'll take one at a time.
Yeah, that's probably.
I probably should take proponents first.
Oh.
Oh, actually, you know what? That's fine. You stood up already, so let's do it. Sir, Sarah.
And I'm sorry to have to take any of your time up with this, because while I realize that none of you were either working for the town or on the select board, this is something that's been going on for 10 years plus. And of late, it sounds something like this at 12:42 at my house this morning. That's coming from the back deck at Cuzzies at 21 Bayview Street. My house is about 70 feet away. And that's a pretty typical clip. It goes on. It's not just intermittent. This is the next minute. Lots of yelling, lots of swearing, every now and then some retching. But just to give you a little bit of the history, because I think it's important, back in the fall of 2009, the select board at their meeting noted that there had been 9 recent complaints regarding intolerable noise and amplified music. And This was reported in the Bangor Daily News and also noted in the minutes of the meeting. Mr. Cousins, who was the operator at the time and remains so, didn't realize there had been so many complaints. The board took no action, but was looking for his cooperation in complying with the noise ordinance going forward. So in August of 2010, when the liquor license was up for renewal and a special permit application, both Willard White and John Duffy, who were neighbors, complained about the sound amplification and noise after 11 p.m. Then Lieutenant Gagney of the Camden Police Department said that the police department was spending a considerable amount of time at Cuzzy's, especially compared with other similar establishments, and had noise and alcohol-related issues. 36 incidents reported between the 6th of June and the 1st of August. The Select Board member Dodge remembered that, oh, didn't we talk about this last October, and concerned that there were so many problems and they weren't being managed by the owner. And so there was a stipulated renewal with a 2-month sort of time frame to look at how management was dealing with complying with the noise ordinance and closing on time, which apparently had been an issue as well. There were calls after 1:15 with open containers found, according to the story. And they said if they found any more of those, there would be a summons and consideration of whether to revoke the license and prosecute for the violations. They were allowed a special amusement permit. There was going to be a three-month meeting, or excuse me, it was noted that there had been a meeting 3 years before with 6 other people complaining about noise, and so this is going back quite a ways. The chair noted, I think it was Karen Grove, that there had been 19 noise violations up until that time, and they decided there would be no live amplification of music. There'd be no music with amplification, only a small PA system, probably for voice. So there was a special amusement license at that time, subject to those conditions. So now fast forward 4 years to 2014, and the noise issues are raised upon the liquor license renewal hearing by Chief Gagney. He said after 1:30 on a Sunday, there had been issues of 3 noise complaints and disorderly conduct and intoxication complaints that were actually called in by the staff. And about the deck, Mr. Cousins said, well, he tried to keep it mellow and keep the noise level down. And Chairman French at the time suggested closing the deck. And he talked about the fact that they needed a place for people to go and smoke. And I'll quote, Mr. Cousins said, if we don't let them smoke on the deck, they will smoke on Bayview Street, and I'm not sure that's any better. Now, I'm sure all of you know that the public accommodation law passed in 2009 by the state of Maine prohibits smoking in areas where food and beverage is served by public accommodations. No exceptions. That's it. It's across the board. And yet we still have a deck on the rear of the building where smoking is regularly taking place. No matter what the signage says, smoking is regularly taking place, and I'll add to that in a minute. A neighbor on Chestnut Street who lives across the street from us basically was having problems sleeping because of the noise from the deck after 11 o'clock. And it was decided that the deck would be closed for 3 months and they'd revisit whether or not there was a way to manage the noise on the deck so that it could be open. So fast forward now to what I just played to you. There have been numerous calls by myself and my husband since we moved into the house in May, a total of 18 calls between the May 31st and July 6th. The police show up, or sometimes when they answer the phone, they say, oh, we've already had another call, so we know it's not just us. And they'll say, we've already sent someone over. And of course, the noise level has just come back up to a ridiculous level. We installed a camera that is basically sound sensitive, and we have many, many, many clips of what it sounded like 15, 20, 30 minutes, 45 minutes after we had called, and the noise level is just up through the roof. And we'd be glad to share those with you if afforded the time. So about the smoking deck, I think that Mr. Cousins and others have said, well, there is no smoking on the deck. We don't allow smoking on the deck. We know it's against the public accommodation law. But if you go online and you look at some of the reviews from the last several years about Cuzzies, this is one from 2018. One drawback, bathrooms are upstairs where they have a smoking area. I don't do stairs well, and I'm allergic to cigarette smoke. So that was in June of 2018. Another from September of 2018, talking about the restaurant, the smoking deck was also a nice addition. And then from July of 2018, the upstairs allows smoking, which is where the bathrooms are located. Did not like that. Another review from 2013, out on the back porch where you can smoke anything. And then another from June of 2018, upstairs there's a smoking room. The whole upstairs reeks of smoke. I almost left because of this, but downstairs was fine. So the idea that there isn't smoking going on the premises, in a state where we have said that there should be no smoking in a public accommodation because of secondhand smoke. I've looked out on a Saturday or a Sunday during the day, and there are small children, like the ones you see here tonight, sitting out there with presumably their parents in the smoking area, spending their day. So it's not like this is just something that's innocuous. The public accommodation law says smoking is not allowed where food and drinks served. It's not allowed in a public accommodation. You have to go out on the sidewalk, and you have to be at least 25 feet away from an entrance or an exit to the facility. So I just want you to understand that from our perspective, the problem is not Mr. Cousins trying to have a bar or people going there to have a good time. It's the fact that there's an outdoor deck that is completely unregulated from 11 o'clock at night until 7 in the morning. Even before then, but of course, the noise ordinance only pertains to 11 to 7, and we understand that. Sleeping right now, this time of year with your windows closed, is impossible, and I'm not going to buy an air conditioner. So I just don't think people realize how much it impacts those of us who live nearby in the zone where there are residences allowed.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Was there another hand I saw that wanted to speak against? Please.
Try not to faint. I'm a little nervous, public speaker.
Deep breath. That's what I always, just take a deep breath, relax.
My name is Suzanne Crawford, and I live at 30 Chestnut Street, which is right next door to Cuzzies. I have an apartment on the second floor, which is immediately overlooking Cuzzies. I moved there in June of 2017, and was enjoying the fact that there was a great view of Mount Batty and the church across the street and everything. But pretty quickly, I became aware of the noise problem at Cuzzies. It was the summertime when it's the worst. And I immediately began every email to my relatives about how are you enjoying yourself? And I said, yeah, but there's this bar problem and it's so noisy. My bedroom was on the side next to Cuzzies, and it's a one-bedroom apartment. And it was so noisy, I bought a noise machine to try to drown the noise out, but I had to play that so loud that I couldn't sleep because I had crashing surf all night long. I got earplugs. Even with earplugs, I couldn't escape the music from there. And especially, you know, sometimes you don't hear music, you just hear like a bass going boom, 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 and you feel like you're being hit with a hammer every time it goes boom, boom, boom. So finally, in I think November of that year, I told my landlords, you know, how unbearable it was. I mean, I couldn't, after maybe even 8 or 9 o'clock at night, there was nowhere I could be in the whole apartment without either having to have the television on loud or you know, earplugs just to drown out the noise. So my apartment was pretty much unusable. So I asked them, there was a storage room associated with the apartment just outside of the apartment in the hall. And I said, if you would, I'm seriously thinking of sleeping in there because I can't sleep. And so I asked them, would they move the wall, to the entrance to the apartment, to the outside of the storage room so that it would actually be in the apartment. I wouldn't have to go out of the apartment in the common area in my pajamas to go to sleep. And so in May of last year, they said, yes, they would do that. So they moved this wall, and so now the storage room is inside the apartment. It's about 8 by 8, and I can just fit a twin bed in there. It has a door that opens onto the little entryway, and there's a window on the front of the building immediately across from it. So if I have the window open a little and the door open a little, I can get some air. So since, I think I moved in there in June of last year, and I've been sleeping there ever since. My back bedroom is just being used as a storage room. Actually, since the Lindquists moved in and complained strongly a couple of times, the noise level went down enough that I would actually go in the back bedroom and, do a sound check. You think I could maybe move back in here someday, but it hasn't been consistent. So, as Sarah was saying, it's mainly, the late night, and the later it gets, the louder it gets. But frankly, even during the daytime, it's just a lot of screaming and yelling from that deck area, lots of profanity. If I sit at the farthest point of the apartment, which is about 25 feet away from the Cuzzies wall, with all my windows closed except for the one right in front of me, I hear it really loud. It's even louder than car traffic going by. Okay? And there's other things. One night I had to call Cuzzies, and I would try to call Cuzzies to say, it's really loud. Could you turn the music down or get your people to quiet down or close on time? And sometimes they would answer, and usually they were pretty surly. Sometimes they just wouldn't answer, and so then I would call the police. So one time I had to call them because this guy was at about 8 o'clock at night practicing his skateboard jumps inside of the deck. And every time he did it, he slammed up against the wall next to my apartment. So I said, could you please get that guy to stop doing that? And they don't close on time. This idea about the 1 and the 1:15 thing, they call me up, I call them and they say, we're allowed to be open until 1:15. I worked in a bar in my youth, and they closed at 1. And the last call was at 12:45, so that patrons would finish their drinks and be out the door at 1 o'clock. Staff could stay till 1:15 to finish up. But Cuzzies runs this like an after-hours bar right up until 1:15 or later. I mean, I've called the police at 2 in the morning to say they're still there, or they're even inside playing music. Would you please get them to close? And I just want to tell you, so in the last several days, since Sarah told me that she, was taping this, I got my little Kindle, and I thought, well, if I go to this meeting, they're going to want to know, so I better check and see what's really going on. So I'll tell you that the night of July 5th to July 6th, Friday and Saturday night, they turned the lights out at 1:16. There were still 6 people outside talking and smoking when they turned the lights out. At 1:23, the lights went back on, and 3 people went into the building. And then the lights went out. And then also, during that same evening, between 1:10 in the morning and 1:23 in the morning, when they finally turned the lights out for the second time, there were still at least 24 people milling around outside talking and smoking, and at least one staff member we know who let them back into the building at 1:23. On July 6th and July 7th, Saturday and Sunday, at 12:11 a.m., there were at least 15 people standing outside smoking and talking, and then the police came, and they walked right by two guys standing at the entrance, smoking what I was pretty sure was a joint, because one guy was passing it to the other one, and the one he was passing it to already had a cigarette in his other hand, so I didn't think it was a cigarette.
Right.
They went into the building, and they came out, one came out.
Now, I'm going to have to stop for a little second here. Do you mention these have been reported to the police department, these incidences you're listing here? Because
I reported what?
Have you reported these to the police department and
These were the
complained?
police there.
Okay, so I want to get to that part. So could you summarize where, I think we got the understanding where you're,
Well, I just want to tell you, so, Sunday and Monday night, the lights went out at 1:21, and there were still several people outside of the building, and they turned the lights out, and the people are still standing there in the dark. And so this is their good behavior right before pre-licensing hearing. And I can tell you that when they get the license, it will just be, anything goes with the rules.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody else want to speak against on something
just ask
different
a-
or new?
We gotta
Because we got to move
restrict time a
forward.
little.
Yeah, we got to stay to a time period here. I'm being a little generous with time, so we're going to limit it to a couple of minutes of anything new that's against this, one second, Peter. You've already had one family speak, and I'm not going to do more. Against? I'm sorry, Jen.
Clarification for, is it Suzanne? Did you say that the police had come and walked by the scenario that you just described?
Yes.
So they must have made a determination of
Yeah,
some
we're
sort?
gonna get to
Okay,
that
that
next.
was all. I just wanted a clarification.
clarification.
Thank you very much.
Sorry? I'm for. Oh, I'm sorry. One second. I was just trying to cover anybody who was against this liquor license first, because that's what you were talking to. Now I'll revert to talk. No, that's.
Can I just add one remark? It's really quick. The point about the police coming and going was that when the police left, the first policeman left and five young people followed him, and the other policeman backed up behind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, just for quick clarification, is this 5C and 6A lumped together now, or is this?
This is just 5C.
5C only.
Really? Okay.
We have to take one at a time. The different,
Well, it really seems like
understood, but
It does seem like it's dovetailing a lot.
I get your point, but I get your point. Go ahead.
All right, well, my name is Chris Kokinis. I was born and raised in Camden, been in real estate business for going on 42 years. I'm a fifth-generation native, so I guess I feel qualified to speak to this. Camden is a destination. It's obvious, and it always has been, and I hope it always will be. The beauty of the town is obvious, but part of the destination, and I meet a lot of people from away because of my business and just being around town. Part of it is just this interesting mix of things that this town has to offer. And part of that mix is all of the establishments that are being discussed this evening. And that is a draw to this town. That is a boost to the community of this town. Now, I read somewhere that for every dollar that gets earned in a town like this, it spends 9 times before it leaves town. So if you just take $100,000 as a small representation of that, that's close to $1 million of our economy in the town of Camden, and we need that. This town needs that. And we need to attract people to come here to enjoy all of the things we have, including these establishments. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration, that the board and the townspeople all are continuing to support these establishments and what they're doing for the draw as well as for the economy. I had one more important. Well, I guess I've made my point, and I just want to, I think they're all playing, the point is because I sell real estate, and even if I didn't, if I were coming to the area to look for peace and quiet, I probably wouldn't buy property in a B1 zone. It's called research, or what we call in our business is due diligence. Somebody missed the point there. So now trying to change something from, being a new person, that I'm offended by that.
Thank you. Oh, please. I have to, please, I thank you, but all the applause, please hold, because this is not a rally. Somebody else want to speak for this permit, please come forward.
My name is Joe Cloutier, live at 10 Claybrook Road, And you know Camden, you know I don't live next door. I'm a customer of that bar and restaurant. Never heard untoward, very loud noise when I've been there. So I can't really speak to the experiences these people had, but my feeling is, being a recovering lawyer and a customer, if they abide by the zoning and the audible ordinances of the town, they should have their license renewed, and that's what I'm urging.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak? For the back of the room, I see a hand. Oh, it's Mr. Keith.
Eric.
I'm sorry, Eric. My vision's not so good. It
Oh, he does look a lot like Keith Rose.
does,
Yeah.
to me.
Kangas from Camden. I can't kind of vouch for the noise level because I don't go to the upper deck. But I do know about the smoking area because he has actually closed down the deck to smoking. So Sarah mentioned that 2018 write-ups. As of 2019, smoking's no longer allowed on the deck. In fact, there's a lot of talk that was said that because he shut it down for smoking, he lost a lot of patrons because that's why they went on the deck. I also know that Kazis has actually put up a lot of be quiet. And I think what may need to be done, if it's not working, is he has two bouncers that manage the upstairs, and maybe they can manage the noise levels. The final thing is, my understanding is, and you may want to check with the police department, is every time they get a complaint, they have to do a drive-by. They actually do test the noise level, and it always has been under what I understand, under the ordinance level, so.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak for the application, young lady? I saw her first. Sorry, sir. It's kind of like a contest.
Yeah, it's a race.
Hi, my name's Heather Busier-Fortin. My husband and I were residents in Camden until last month. We sold our house. Now we live in Mount Pleasant and Rockport. I am the main bartender upstairs at Cuzzy's. I've been there 10 years, 2 months. I'm up there 4 nights a week, 2 days a week. Since the recent complaints, we really haven't had complaints in years up until the last few months. We have, first of all, completely shut the music down off the deck. We have a button, no music on the deck whatsoever. We have 2 heavy curtains we close. We have 4 wooden blinds that we shut down. Chris has hired 2 guys, one at the top of the stairs, one on the back deck at all times until we are shut down. The bartender's locked inside when we're counting cash, cleaning up, and stocking. There are no people coming in after hours to drink or smoke or do anything. I get my stuff done, I go home because I want to be home. It really has affected, the locals are upset, no music, there's no smoking on the deck. If anyone is caught smoking, they're asked to leave. You can come back. If you do it again, you're banned. We don't mess around. We ban people immediately if they do anything inappropriate at our establishment because we don't want to be known for that and we don't want the problems. What else? Yeah. And as far as the noise complaints, the cops do come down. They let us know. You know, we're at the top of the hill for 5-10 minutes. You're at about 34 decibels. And as my understanding is, it's 65 decibels allowed, maintained for at least 5 minutes, and then you are breaking the ordinance. And they usually come in and say, you know, you're fine, but we have to come in and report that to you that, you know, you're at 34 and every time the cops show up, they have to let us know we have a noise complaint. The crowd dwindles. I have noticed a significant drop in my tips for the last 10 years and over the last few months. The one time we kind of saw a problem, 4th of July, day we're celebrating our freedom and independence. We got a noise complaint. The cops were there at 11:30. They said they're at the top of the hill. It spiked to about 63 decibels, but just spiked, went down, didn't even maintain for 30 seconds or a minute or more. So we were completely within the ordinance. We went outside, completely shut our deck down, turned off the lights because we didn't want to be an annoyance to the neighbors or anyone complaining. Everyone was very upset, and that night I punched out and was on my way home at 1:08 in the morning, where I should have been taking drinks at 1:14, 1:15 in the morning, and then cleaning up, counting my money, stocking, going home around 2 a.m. So every time there's a problem, we totally try to do what we can to remedy it.
Thank
Can I
you.
ask just a quick
Yeah, of course you
question?
can, of course.
Do you think that maybe with not having any music on the deck, that could make it worse? Just with, I know just like even on Mechanic Street, when people walk by, it's annoying when they're on the sidewalk and just the sustained music maybe helps to drown out.
Well, my thought process was that having music played on the deck, people may talk over and won't be able to hear each other so much. So I didn't know if it would raise the level of noise and conversation.
Yeah,
And
sorry.
the cops have even said, like, when it spikes, it's like laughter, like a group of people laughing or something, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
What time does the deck close?
The deck closes, once we have everyone's beverages legally at 1:15, it's closed. If you have to go pee, you need a glass of water, great, but you gotta go.
So the deck is,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. State of Maine, you cannot serve alcohol past 1 AM.
Right.
And legally, we have to have all drinks by 1:15, and then you're on your way. And I have been tip certified by the state of Maine since 2001. I bartended all through college, and I've done this for 20 years.
Thank you very much. One more speaker to speak for it. This gentleman first.
My name is Keith May, and I live in Lincolnville, and I spent a lot of time on Bayview Street, having had Peter Otts down there for some 30-something years. But, and this has been somewhat going on for a long, long time. I mean, especially in the summertime, especially come June, when people want to open windows, and people, you know, are seeing friends, more people are coming to town. So it definitely hits at the beginning in June sometimes when there's questions and problems like this. But, I mean, Camden has zoning, and there's lots of apartments, and you want lots of apartments downtown, you want the business. Cuzzy's is commercial, the building right next door where Susan is a combination. I mean, it's supposed to be commercial on the first floor, and then there's residential on the third floor. And those two buildings are 2 feet apart. And in comes zoning or the law or the decibel meter to try to referee this issue that that is not only just there or with one place, but it's in other places. And so, you know, it's going to take, I don't know, some give and take and some understanding and some realizing where you are. I understand that basically most of these, that it hasn't been registering that high on the official legal amount. And I think Chris has done a great job in the last 5 years. 3/4 of what was said there earlier is 5 to 10 years old. I mean, that's not, shouldn't be at play here tonight. Hopefully we're quicker and so, you know, now somebody has changed the upper area there to another residence, you know, so that adds another push on their side for peace and quiet. But there's still the whole business area and people trying to maintain a business community.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
there
you
was
for your
one
time,
more
too.
person I did see pointed at like that 3 times, so you almost got missed. You almost got missed.
Boy, do I feel like a newcomer. I am brand new around here. I've only been in town for 2 months, so you're getting the newcomer's perspective from me. My name is Jenna Norwood, but I go by OSHA. It's a joke nickname because of my obsession with safety and health, like the federal agency. And
That's good to know.
I'm here for family
We
care.
have a committee for you.
Well, ta-da! Got my whistle all the time, you know, help people cross the road. For real, wait a second, hang on. Orange gloves, just in case. Wow. So I'm here for family caregiving reasons, and at night, you know, I want to get to know the locals, the neighbor, figure out where I am. I'm a DC native, but I've been living in Sarasota, Florida the last 20 years, taking care of family there, and have been through this same situation over and over again in Sarasota with noise ordinances. And my mother's hometown, where she was born, Sarasota, Florida, became extremely popular to tourists. And all of a sudden, we started running into these problems of commercial areas butting up against residential areas and complaints. And I get to as a PR consultant, I had a business there, I ended up representing community gathering places in these situations. So I find myself here, and I'm here for a month, and all of a sudden I see signage going up everywhere, and rules and regulations and police showing up almost every night. So I got my own decibel meter going, and FYI, just during, I believe, Ms. Lindquist's testimony, it was 60.9 decibels in here. And the decibel level halfway up the hill, the limit behind Cuzzies is 65. So I've taken it upon myself to measure the last 4 nights I've been there, leading up to this meeting, out of concern. And there's, you know, you can get apps, so it's just an app. And you can see where we're at right now. And then I can also get I can also take a photo of what's going on, and it gives me the average, you know, so I've got a record, so when the police show up, I can say, hey, we're self-monitoring, and it hasn't hit, we're within the regulations. So as far as I understand, and you know, I could be corrected if I'm wrong, but of the 18 times there were complaints, I believe if there were any legitimate complaints, there may have been just 2, and they were about 2 decibels above, but not consistently for 5 minutes. So at this point, I'm noticing the effect it's having on this community, and the community includes, right now there's a pool league going on there, people playing ping pong, people who work, you know, down at the marina on the schooners who are out for 4 nights and they just need a place to hang out. The servers, you know, 4th of July I was there, and it was packed with people who were serving people all day long. And their party got interrupted at midnight, and they had to clear the deck. And as it turns out, it was not a legitimate complaint yet again. So at some point, I just wonder if there would be any kind of penalty, you know, if there are 18 complaints and police have to continue using their time and energy and resources and taxpayer dollars in this way, at any point, is there a consequence to someone who's repeatedly making false complaints? Now, I have great compassion for anyone who is having trouble sleeping or anyone who's living in an environment where there's too much sound and it's just disruptive, but also, I wouldn't move next to a bar if I don't like the sound of a bar. I wouldn't move next to a railroad track if I didn't like the sound of trains. I mean, I would pay attention, and I know the zoning around there has been kind of flip-floppy. I believe the residence was previously a law firm. And also I'm aware that, you know, I looked at Google Earth, and I noticed that before the Lindquists moved in, there was dense foliage that separated their residence from Cuzzies. And I know landscape architects often use that technique as a sound barrier and a visual barrier. They chose to remove all that foliage. So, you know, it's substantial when you look at the Google Earth image. I don't know if that would make a difference of 10 decibels or what. I don't know. It would have been interesting to test it before and after. In terms of smoking on the back deck, I'm very impressed with how the customers are policing themselves. In the past month I've been there, I haven't once seen people smoking in the area where they're not supposed to be smoking. Substantial signs everywhere. I wonder about the church bell decibels and why that's an exception when the church bells are wrong most of the time, 7 minutes late.
Not most of the time, that's an exception.
No, it's actually most of the hours of the day.
But in the last 2 months.
Oh, no, I don't know. I'm just talking about, it's odd.
Historically,
I don't know. I'm just
it's
saying
been-
in the last few days, I'm thinking, I was there 2 nights ago, and the bartender said, oh my gosh, did I make people leave too early because the bell just went off? And I said, no, it's 1:07 now. So, but throughout history, people have congregated, and they have made sound when they congregate, and people need to have a place to do that. And as far as I know, Cuzzies is really the only place that's there for the locals. I hear locals coming back and saying, I don't feel welcome here anymore. College students and people who grew up here coming back to visit. And I mean, I even witnessed on the back deck, friends who hadn't seen each other, oh my God, I'm so excited to see you. And the security is saying, shh, they're like, I'm so excited to see you. And it's just, this, at some point, it gets ridiculous. I'm concerned, you know, I am very passionate about community. I'm passionate about people getting good REM sleep as well. I don't know what the solution is, but I really don't believe it's appropriate for a resident to be able to repeatedly make false claims.
Thank you, Ocean. Thanks. Welcome to Camden.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
I'd like, just 1 minute. I'd like, the select board has to operate under certain regulations and ordinances, and there's nothing in the application that I've seen of any ordinance, out of ordinance. Chief, could you speak to it briefly? Well, I have to. Unfortunately, I have to, because I want to.
Having spent a number of years here, this isn't the first time we've been through this. I concur with everything Sarah gave for historical information. There has been issues in the past. I think we had one nuisance complaint last year, and now we're seeing an increase in change of what the residence is from residential to, from business to residential. We changed the noise ordinance because the police used to be asked to go and basically give our opinions. Well, the opinion of what noisy is to a 20-year-old police officer might be the difference of what it is to a 50-year-old police officer. And we had nothing to gauge it by. That's why the 65 decibel was put in there. Our officers do respond. As I gave you the report, we've had several that were spiked over while the officers were there. Nothing sustained for more than 5 minutes while there. That doesn't mean it hasn't been sustained to you while you're listening to it, waiting for the police to get there. We put the 65 in there for a reason, and if they're not registering over that, unless we're going to go back and change everything, I don't see where, I see it's an issue for the delinquents trying to get a good night's sleep, but you're going to have to make that decision as to how we want to proceed with this.
So what you-
I have an open, I talk to Chris quite often. Chris knows my feeling on the deck as far as smoking. He knows that there's going to be a problem there. It's against the law for anybody to smoke on that deck, and they need to police that. I think they're doing that now. I'm sure that there's an occasional person who's smoking. I'd be very interested to hear what you had to say as far as the officers walking by somebody smoking. Without really looking into what they were doing at that time, I couldn't give you an answer, but I'd be happy to talk to you and find out what had happened.
Could I just ask for
Sure.
clarification
Sure.
about the deck? What constitutes the deck?
The deck is the wooden structure there. That is included in the license, as part of his license. That is part of the bar.
Grounds around that
Nope.
are not included?
No.
And what about smoking sitting up against the side of the building?
You can't smoke, I don't believe, within 25 feet of the entrance. So. Oh, I don't doubt it.
All right.
Don't doubt it at all.
We're going to get into a debate about who's doing what, but the summary of what you're saying, the calls you've had, you haven't seen as yet anything that's out of
It's
ordinance.
sustained over 65 decibels now.
Why don't I read from the report, that the report that the police department has given us. It says in terms of the complaints, only 2 complaints had decibel readings that were in excess of 65 decibels. The highest was 73, the other 67. Neither reading was for a prolonged period. So that's,
And I think
that's the facts of what.
Since that was, since I submitted that report, I think there's been 3 additional complaints.
I see.
And there might have been a spike into the 70s once, but it was not a sustained spike. So,
Any other questions for the chief before we?
I don't.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to first hear from the applicant, because I think he's obviously has vested interest.
Hi, my name is Chris Cousins from Camden, the owner and manager of Cuzzies. My main goal is to operate a safe and productive business and keep peace in the neighborhood. I mean, so when somebody brings it to my attention that we have a problem or an issue or something's not going the way it should, I do my very best to address it and take as the greatest action I can to resolve it. So a few weeks ago, Chief Gagne called me and said, there's a new neighbor in town, and we got a noise complaint last night, so you need to address the issues. We got a complaint about smoking, and we got a complaint about the noise on the back deck. Because I've had complaints from the front, from Bayview Street over the years and from various places, so I can pinpoint where it's coming from. I have a much better chance of figuring out what's causing it and then solving it. So I will admit that over the years, we have not enforced the no smoking on the back deck as stringently as we could have. It kept people off the sidewalk, it kept them kind of contained into one area, and it didn't seem to bother anybody. So, I mean, technically it was a non-smoking area, but we didn't really enforce it that much. Since it's been an issue and it is bothering somebody, I posted numerous additional signs, and I hired somebody specifically to stay on the back deck every night. And their 2 functions are to make sure that people don't smoke on the back deck, keep the noise level down, and don't take alcoholic beverage, because now they have to leave the back deck if they want to have a smoke, like in the little lawn area or nearby. So we have to make sure that they leave their beverages, alcoholic beverages, inside, because that's the last thing we want now is to, now we run the risk of having an alcohol violation when that happens. So we have to guard against that as well. Same with the front door. Now I have to pay special attention to people who decide they want to go out on Bayview Street. So I gave you all a little packet with some photos to show you some of the steps I've taken. There's a couple. Heather, the bartender, had mentioned about the speakers. This winter, I changed the location of the speakers on the back deck, and I bought a better quality so I could play it at lower volume and still have better sound, and I aimed them in as opposed to straight down where they were. That was way before any of this. That was just my ongoing efforts to try to make a better environment and keep the neighbors happy. Since we started having complaints, I've asked the bartenders to pay attention to because we have a separate volume control and a separate on-off for the speakers on the back deck. When you're behind the bar, you can't hear it unless you specifically go out there and pay attention to it. I said, we have to pay attention to the volume on the back deck and be very careful, to make sure we're not too loud. My bartenders have elected to just shut them off. They don't want to run the risk because they know how serious it is to me. If we get a complaint and they forgot to turn the speakers down, they know that I'm going to, hold them to task. So they've just elected to leave them turned off. So we don't even turn the speakers on out there anymore, which is kind of a shame for some people. I feel really bad about keeping you up at night. I've gotten several phone calls on my answering machine over the years from this woman, I never knew who she was, recognized her voice tonight, about it's 1 o'clock, you're supposed to be closed, you're supposed to have everybody out of there. And, I never had a way to call her back. I tried a couple times, I didn't get an answer. To explain that Maine state law says we can serve alcohol until 1 o'clock. At 1:15, we have to have everybody's drinks out of their hand. And then the bartenders start cleaning up, turn the lights on, do whatever. We try to get the people out of there as quickly as we can. Some nights it's easier than others. There have been times over the years where people are milling around talking, they just won't leave, and it's, 1:30, 1:45, quarter to 2 o'clock in the morning. We can finally get them to leave, but that's not against the law. That's just us trying to get them out. My bartenders do a phenomenal job of getting out of there and getting home and getting closed. I mean, most of the times by 1:40, they're punched out and gone. And that's almost unheard of when you work a late night bar. Other than what the steps I've taken, there was one incident that happened at, I think it was 9/24. Whenever somebody brings me a complaint and lets me know something's going on, I pull up my security footage from the back deck and I can see. I can't hear, but I can see. And when I see 4 people sitting there chatting, I'm pretty sure that they weren't over the noise level. I don't hear a lot of the yelling and screaming, and now I've heard a couple of recordings, the profanity and things like that. I'm going to step that to my my bouncer staff or my security staff or whatever, the person on the deck, and I'm going to try to put an end to that as well. If I know there's a problem or I know something that's not the way it should be, then I'll take steps to eliminate it. Lost where I was at. A bunch of photos, boom, I've re-nicknamed the back deck the library in hopes to get people to treat it as such. I put a big sign up and a tapestry with a bookcase on it on one wall that says the library. Right. And then I put another sign that says the library, so people will, and I put a whole bunch of quiet signs up. Mainly, it's a cross between serious and humor. People see this whole wall and, okay, but I have to find a way to get to them. And I see a lot of people come down through there when I'm rewatching the security footage, and they just point at them all. And they are getting noticed. And it's also something that a tool my staff can use to point out when they try to tell a group of people to keep it down, we're getting too loud. And we're serious about it. So we do the very best we can. I know that, it's unfortunate that you have to go and sleep in a different room, and I feel bad about that. But when the building literally is like 2 feet away from ours, I mean, I used to rent that apartment as an office years ago when we didn't have the whole building. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I sat there many times and I could hear everything on the back deck or whatever, but I think one of the ordinances is you have to be disturbing to somebody who's more than 50 feet away. I think there's that's cushion in that decibel level there so that we can operate a business in the business zone. I don't know, unless there's any questions, I'll be, yeah, sure.
I have a question about how big a part of the establishment is the back deck?
It's hard to say. I mean, you can't really, I mean, when we closed it 5 years ago for 3 months, I roughly estimated around $5,000-$6,000, in lost revenue. But you get a group of people inside.
Right.
And they come outside, and then they go back inside.
Right.
So it's not like,
If you started to close the back deck, say even an hour earlier before you closed, would that make a big difference in
I don't know about
your
a-
business? And would it make a big difference to the people next door if the back deck was started to be emptying before everything else?
well, that's what
If
we did
that's
on the
if
4th of
that's a
July.
compromise.
We had a noise complaint on the 4th of July, and the officer said, you're getting close. You're a couple decibels under, but you're getting close. Now, my guy working the back deck took it upon himself to shut it down. He turned the lights on, flickered them a couple times to warn people, hey, you're getting too loud. And then a few minutes later, that wasn't seeming to do the trick. Heather came out and said, it seems pretty loud out here. We need to do something. And he said, okay. And at midnight, he shut the lights off and told everybody to leave. But we weren't really in violation. But we didn't want to take the chance. But
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm just
I
trying to
think it
figure,
would-
I'm just trying to see, is there a compromise that would make a difference? I don't know enough about your business to.
I think
I'm curious.
I've held at my end, very well. I mean, I've
Well, I
posted a ton
can
of
see
signs
from the
and,
pictures, you've done an amazing job, and the legal complaints are not there.
Oh, they're not, the ordinance. Yeah, we need, what?
Oh,
You got a question?
comment, not a, but when will?
Yeah, when are we
Yeah,
gonna,
we're gonna start.
one more thing.
All right, one more thing, and then I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
revert to
just,
the
I
select.
put up, there's a little Facebook post that I gave you that you might not understand or not. This was at 9:24, 9:25 at night. We have curtains and blinds that we draw. A customer of mine came down the back hill with his moped and parked it outside the back deck and had a Bluetooth speaker on it, which nobody was aware of. There's 4 people inside, so he went in, grabbed his remote control and he turned it on. Because I had turned off, we turned off the music out there, whatever. The neighbor bothered her, obviously. She came over and they had words and he turned it off and, the staff came out and that was, the end of that. And it's nothing that I condone. We didn't even know about it until it happened the next day or whatever. So that Facebook post is the post that I posted the next day. I'm not going to tolerate it. He's not allowed in anymore. It's like,
I see that.
and that's just
I
the
see
way it
that.
is. He's not acting in accordance with keeping the peace, so.
Thank you, Chris. I want to close the public hearing portion of this discussion right now and revert to the select board for deliberation. Taylor, do you want to start, or anybody want to start?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I hear what you're saying, and I do understand, but I also have to look at Chris Kokinis, and also, this is kind of an anecdotal thing, but reverting back to my experience at the Owl's Head Transportation Museum, where I was the public relations director, people move in by an airport and then call and complain about airplane noise. And I know that this is frustrating. I know that anywhere that you live, there are going to be frustrations. I live way out of town, and I'm shocked by the road noise from the fast cars. I never expected that. I do believe that, I know there's a lot of history. I've covered it as a journalist. I've heard about it when my dad was on the select board. I believe that Chris does a really good job of trying to work with people. I know that there's not ever going to be a perfect solution. We're talking about what realistically, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm not in the bar scene myself anymore, but it was realistically the one late night place Camden has. And I'm really afraid that if we start to go down this path, that we're just knocking out any nightlife scene that we may be clinging to. And I believe that responsible parties can work together, and I know Heather and I know Chris, and I'm hearing a lot of people that I respect on both sides of this. But I have to say that I will absolutely not pull their liquor license.
Mr. Ratner.
I'm always looking to see if there are any compromises. That's why I mentioned, maybe the back deck starts to shut down or have a quiet time, before the rest of the restaurant closes. Maybe that's a good way to do it. But legally, the police report doesn't give us any reason to shut it down that I can see. And, it's, but it's hard. I think everything that Jenna said is, if you live by an airport, you get airplane noise. And it's a shame that they cut down the vegetation, because that can make a difference. No, I know you, no, I know. It's a shame that it was done. Yeah. That's it for right now.
All right.
Come back.
Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mark and Jenna, and I mean, I'm very sympathetic to people who want to sleep, but the reality is we have zoning ordinances, and we have noise ordinances, and they haven't been violated. And I believe Chris when he says that he wants to work with his neighbors, and I think obviously that's the best thing any business owner would do when you are in a situation like this. And I think that having this discussion hopefully is just a healthy way to help that move forward. I was a downtown resident for 3 years, and living downtown comes with pros and cons. The access is great. You don't necessarily need a car. You can walk anywhere. It's great, but the reality is it's not just the businesses, but Route 1's right there, and so there were times when I've heard road noise and things like that, people just walking loudly back to hotels that they live across the river at in the summertime, and it's a choice that I made, and I bought a big fan and it drowned it out, and that worked for me. I realize it doesn't work for everybody. So yeah, I'm sympathetic to all the parties, but I think the reality is we don't have an action to legitimately deny a liquor license, and I agree with Jenna that I would be very reticent to start going down a slippery slope and affecting the nightlife in town.
Ms. McKellar?
Yeah, I have lived in apartments downtown before. I've slept in bathrooms in those apartments before. I have put, I'm very sensitive to it. The last one, when I lived above the main dog for a little bit, I put big curtain, like comforters over the windows, multiple fans. I do that at my house right now just because we have some tenants that share the kitchen, and so it's the snow plows. If you get in the right apartment downtown, the snow plows can be it can drive you crazy, that backing up noise over and over again. If you live over by the French and you probably heard that, right?
I wasn't going to get specific.
But I mean, it's really, and I was a bartender at Peter Ott's about 10 years ago for 3 or 4 years. And, the difference, the decline of nightlife in Camden is kind of sad. It was, when I was just listening to this with the 115 and the rules and the lights out, and I mean, everybody would have been horrified at the way I operated Peter Ott's at the end of the night. It was certainly not turning off the lights. I would turn on the mute once everybody left at 2 sometimes.
Those are the days.
I would turn on, I would have the lights on. I'd be cleaning with the music, and people would just smoke out on the front part, and it's not good. I'm glad that we are cracking down on the smoking. Lately, it's a huge problem all over town. The town can't. We should be careful though, as a town and as a property owner, because we have shown ourselves completely incapable of enforcing our policies about not smoking on town property. I spent a lot of time down on the public landing, and it just seems like constant smoke lately. And people smoke. They'll come out from underneath the river after smoking pot, and I find their little cans with the marijuana still burning. And it's a problem everywhere. And I feel like there's just going to be this give and take, and I hopefully Chris, you'll continue to be accommodating when you can, but I kind of worry about just the impact of how far we've gone down, how much time we devoted tonight. It just, what kind of a message does that send to other business owners? And I definitely can't, I support continuing to crack down with the smoking, but it is going to create more of a problem because all they can do is control their area. And so that is going to push people out. and we have the same problem on all town properties. So I think we need to have like a community meeting about how, you know, how do we handle this? Are we really saying smokers are banned from Camden, or do we have designated smoking areas? I don't know what the solution is. I find myself even having a hard time confronting people down at the public landing and saying, I don't know what the right words are or what to tell people where they should smoke, or, anyway, it's a difficult issue, and
It is.
yeah,
It is.
I think we should
Yeah, I would agree.
the status quo for
Agreed.
this particular issue.
Yeah, I know this is every town, every city in the planet, that people are congested and close to each other, these issues occur. The town has taken a major step in trying to develop an ordinance that we all understand and know what it is. Now, whether that ordinance is 100% effective or not, that's something we can look at. I think we should. Decibel readings and time periods are kind of a difficult thing to challenge, but you know what? It's the rule of law right now. I purposely live on 3 acres north of the town area because I've been there, done that with noise and stuff, but that said, there's nothing that says a person can't move next to me and decide to have very loud parties from 7 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night, and I can do nothing about it. But after hours, I do have the ordinance to rely on. But from the select board's perspective, we have to enforce the law, the rule of law. And in this case, it's the ordinance. Now, again, I would challenge whether it's perfect or not, but nothing's perfect. We may need to take another look at that going forward. But I would have to agree with the other select board members. This is a slippery slope. And the reason why that was crafted was to start the process.
Let me just add, I was on the select board, and I was the major push behind the sound ordinance, because we did not have one before. And so there's no basis for the chief and the department to do any kind of policing with sound ordinance. They had to sort of make up their mind. So we spent a lot of time, members of the planning board, we did a special committee to come up with a sound ordinance that was the best solution that we could come up with for the town. And it's worked very well. And, you know, it's the best answer that we could come up with, and we have to live by that. We can't make exceptions.
Prepared for a motion?
Yes.
I move that we approve the liquor license renewal for Cuzzies at 21 Baby Street.
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor? 5-0. Thank you very, very much. The last public hearing is for Cuzzies again for a special amusement permit for the inside, as I understand it, for the interior lounge and for the main dining areas. I understand that this is not on a deck amusement. Anybody would like to speak against? Okay, you'll get your chance against the amusement permit.
I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to note that
Because I just turned and muted the setup.
Okay, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to note that the decibel readings that you have gotten thus far were not with a live band going on for long dance records and long numbers, and then another one for 2 and 3 hours at a time. So that's something to be considered.
Thank you.
And also that they have their windows open and they have a roof bubble kind of thing that's open too, so the noise comes out from that. Also, just one point of clarification that I wasn't sure about. The readings that have been taken, I thought that readings were supposed to be at the property line, and I thought Cuzzy's property line was about 2 feet from their door.
The ordinance does specify readings at the property level, as I recall, correct, Chief?
Chief shaking his head yes over there.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, thank you. Anybody else would like to speak against this area, against? You want to speak against?
I just want to say
Oh.
that it's very important that decibel meters are calibrated. Apps are not reliable at all.
I would agree.
I don't know how often the police decibel meters are calibrated, but they must be calibrated, otherwise they're
Well, they
useless.
also have to be monitored on a dBA scale, not a dB scale, which is technical, but that's another issue. Peter, you want to speak against it?
I'd like to speak against it. I think it's great that we've all come together. I'm not going to debate the level of efforts Mr. Cousins has made at managing this establishment, but a special amusement activity, I think, is just a little outrageous, considering the size of the building and the poor insulation and the poor management of sound. And I appreciate everybody talking about curtains and whatnot, but no, there's no great sound management, and I think a special license for more sound is the last thing we need to promote a community.
Thanks, Peter. Anybody else against this? For? Anybody would speak for? Yes, sir, you've been patient for the whole afternoon here, but it's evening.
Is there currently a special amusement
Yes.
permit?
This is a renewal.
Just a
Yeah,
renewal
it's
of?
renewal.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a second, please.
Good evening, Select Board. My name is Eric Anderson. I'm the general manager for the Bayview Collection Hotel Group, specifically mentioning 16 Bayview. We've been neighbors of Chris Cousins and Cuzzies since January 23rd of 2016, which is our birth date for 16 Bayview Hotel. Our job is heads and beds and comfort and welcome to Camden and hospitality. And I stand before you today in favor of all approvals for Cuzzies, especially for their special amusement license. I'm here on behalf of also Marion and Stuart Smith, who asked one of our representatives to be here. They're out of town tonight, but they've been great accommodating neighbors. Anytime we've ever had a challenge, I'm in hospitality, there's no such thing as complaints, there's always opportunities for improvement. Cuzzies is on the spot. All of his folks are 100% in hospitality with all of our team members. And we've been nothing but very appreciative of them being very respectable. So,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric.
Yes, sir. Please.
Good evening. My name's Emmett Lawler. I'm a Camden resident. I have been for about a year and a half now, but I grew up here in town, in Lincolnville, actually. But my parents run
That's
the
okay.
Camden Jewelry Company. And I'm a local musician and a entertainer, and I run a small open mic at Guzzi's on Sunday evenings. This is an acoustic open mic where, people bring acoustic guitars and they sing. This is an acoustic open mic where people bring acoustic guitars and sing into a microphone, and it really doesn't get very loud in there. And I think it would be a real detriment to the community and to the town that's slowly been being choked out by people over the years. Bars have closed down. This is really the last place that I have to come and play in town, and my friends have to come and play in town. And they don't do concerts down there anymore. They used to. Gilbert's used to have concerts,
Oh, yeah.
And, it's something that brings in tourists late at night, having some live music. And it would just be horrible if we weren't allowed to play there anymore. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ms. Young.
Good evening. Kathy Young, Camden. I grew up on C Street, and many, 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 many nights I was so sad that I was not of drinking age because the sound coming out of the garage across the harbor just was rocking this town in such a fun fashion. Then I went away. Then I came back, and where I wanted to live was right downtown. So first I lived at 6 Bayview Street, now I live at 24. I'd have to admit, the first year, I was like, oh, scuzzies, you keep dropping your drunks onto my street. But in the last 3 years, I've been there 4 years, this is my 4th summer, I have not had a problem. I haven't heard noise. I did have to break up a fight the first summer where there was a woman on a man, and I remember yelling at them because I'm the voice of God from the deck, and they're like, who's yelling at me? If he was hitting you, you want me to call the police, so stop hitting him. Anyway, so I'm looking out for the people, but seriously, we need this town to be alive. Bayview Street is alive, and I miss the old Peterots, I miss the garage, I miss all that. And Sorry, I called you Scuzzies, but I do, because there's a bit of a vibe there. It's kind of fun. I don't go there, but they come, and the smoking thing is an issue, because they sit on my blue bench, so I kind of go, go home, or I go to Lake Beach. That's what all normal kids do.
Oh, that's town property, that's not allowed.
Whatever. Not a problem.
Don't go there.
Okay,
Please
so
don't go
anyway, what I'm saying is, I can't imagine that it's going to do anything but enhance Camden to continue to celebrate what's happening on Bayview Street. And I'm right there. You come to town because you want to be part of vibrancy. You don't come to town because you want to get a good night's sleep. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Kathy.
No applause, please, please. Sorry, you gotta, unless you're applauding for me, that's allowed. But
Bob will take it.
thank you. Anybody else? Did you want to say anything, Chris? Or I'm sorry, OSHA?
Can I talk again? I mean, not if somebody else wants to.
If it's brief. Come on, OSHA. I'll never forget your name. Nickname.
Just remember, I got the whistle. Yeah, so music is important. It's been going on forever. And already I think it's odd that drums aren't allowed there. I mean, drums are primal, native. Like what's going on here? People can't congregate, they can't talk, they can't play drums. Now we're going to try to take away music. What kind of place is this?
Hold on, that's the drum rule?
There's no drums allowed.
Our rule.
Well, it's from former issues in the past, and there are no drums. So there's some amazing drummers who'd like to drum. At open mic, they're not allowed to drum. And that's odd. That's missing a big piece of a band. Like Camden losing its beat. What's going on?
Thank you. Thank you.
Drums. So I'm just curious. Like it would be nice to see it go the other direction. More music would be great.
Thank you, OSHA. Chris, you want to say anything before I revert to the select board?
Yeah, just really quickly. I mean, the special amusement part is mainly in order to have any kind of entertainment, karaoke, open mic night.
Right.
I usually have a friend of mine who comes up from Georgia once a year in the summer, plays a couple nights. He's fantastic. He's the one guy with a PA and a guitar, and he's wonderful. In response to the drums or whatever, a few years ago, when we were having issues with bands and Willard down on Bayview Street and the noise coming through, and it wasn't, I would look back over the minutes a few days ago to reread it, because I had always been under the impression, no drum sets, no electric bass guitars. Acoustic, basically what Sarah read earlier with acoustic and small amplifiers. So that's what we do, is like singles, duos, trios,
right?
And no electric bass guitars and no drum sets. And I tell people, it's unfortunate, I just had the band Diedo call me back. They were here in December for a quick reunion, and then they had a spare date in July. They wanted to come back and play, and with a full band, and I had to tell them single, duo, trio, no drum sets, no electric bass guitars, whatever. And he's like, hey, we'll just take the night off, but thank you anyway.
Because you had a conditional permit or something?
I told him point blank, I would love to have you guys back. You started in Camden, you have a lot of family and friends in Camden. Now you've got a break in your tour and you want to come back and play at Cuzzies because they love the place. And when I had them in the December, it was just 3 of them. That's why I told him in the Facebook post. I messaged him back. I said, hey, back in December, there was just 3 of you.
Right.
And I'm not so concerned about the noise with everybody's windows closed right now. Right now, I've got some issues. I'm getting complaints that, the police have been down and blah, blah. I can't push it. I can't take the chance. So here's the deal. I'm not able to do it. So, we might get a special amusement permit. We're going to have it, but it's not like we have great big bands down there all the time. And
thank you, Chris. You have a
I
question?
just ask one quick
Sure, go
clarification
ahead.
point. When you do the open mic or karaoke or anything like that, it is in the front of the building, correct?
Yeah, it's on the Bayview Street
So
side.
it's on
and it
the
ends at
opposite side of the
12:30.
deck for people who don't know the layout of the building.
Yeah,
So
you can't
it's
even hear
the
karaoke or
picture
anything from
window.
the back deck.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That I'm going to close the public hearing portion, revert to select board discussion. Mark, you want to begin?
Start. I don't drink, so I don't go to bars for alcohol, but I have been to Cuzzies to hear the music, and music is important. It's an important thing to have in a town. I think maybe the next thing we talk about after that is maybe we have a drummer come in for the select board meetings and pick it up a little bit. Maybe we do it there.
The only
'cause
show in town.
I don't think we get the complaints. But, it is important that there is a place especially for acoustic musicians. There are a lot of tremendously talented people in Maine, and they need a place to play.
Okay. Jenna?
I personally don't see an issue with the location of the music that I've seen there, that I see videos of. We have, Allison and I have a friend who comes in from Mississippi that brings dogs up, that loves to go sing open mic. She's incredibly talented. I have no objection to their special amusement permit myself.
Allison?
I think it's a completely separate issue.
Thank you, John. Allison?
Yeah, I certainly have no objections to it, and I would also hope that we would be clear that it's a permit without conditions, so just like the normal permit that everybody else gets. And, to be managed appropriately as, the business
I would agree.
sees fit, but I don't think by excluding certain instruments, we're really bringing ourselves any closer to the goal.
Yeah, are you?
Yeah, I'm done.
Taylor?
I won't repeat what everyone just said again, but I think Kathy hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's not the first time I've heard, talk about the way that Camden used to be when the garage was in town, and I think it was like, bars that were right next to the old police department when it was right here, and.
Mr. Kites.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm very concerned about sending a message that Camden's not about vibrancy, because in my opinion, it's the opposite. So that's all I have. I move that we approve the special amusement permit for Cousins at 21 Bayview Street.
Second.
Discussion? All's in favor? 5-0. Thank you very much. With that, I close the public hearing portion of our meeting. How many people are here to discuss Central Street? Okay, what we're going to do? We're going to move it up the agenda because people have been so patient. The
Yeah,
kids
you
have
guys-
left. I wish they were still here, but thank you for bringing them.
They were so good.
They were so good, but we will take just a couple of minute break here, and then we will immediately go into Central Street and discussion, okay?
Like that. Thank you. Motorcycle.
Turn the AC back on, make it shut off.
A year ago tomorrow, we had, did a temporary experiment with Central Street from Cross to High as a one-way street only. One-way entrance, right? One-way entrance to, no, well, that's correct. That's
Two-way
correct.
street, one-way entrance.
One-way entrance. Thank you for the clarification. Should be a traffic engineer. That expires tomorrow, not that we couldn't extend it, but the action by the board needs to be the discussion about anything from, keeping it as is forever to further experimentation or whatever we want. But that's just, we should discuss it and resolve it before tomorrow. So with that said, we can go any number of, is anybody here would like to speak to problems with the current configuration? Kathy Young again. Yep.
I'm happy to. I said Allison, first introduce myself, yet again. Kathy Young, Camden resident. When you guys changed that to one-way, I said, are you trying to incite rage? I also said it again when you were trying to take the second exit off that parking lot, which I hope to God you're not going to do. Separate issue.
Done.
But if locals can't get out of the downtown trudge, you're just making it worse, and you're making the backup all the way to Dots. It's horrific. And for those of us who know how to get out, those are some of the exit clauses. And I'm not racing 60 miles an hour to, oh, yay, I got out of Main Street, I'm going to scoot up Cross Street. I'm just going to be like, thank God I don't have to go down Main Street and get stuck behind the 4 crosswalks. You really need to leave it two-way. This one-way stuff is for the birds.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure you
Does
can.
Cross Street not work for, because
Right.
Going up and then down? Yeah.
I get that you're not going 60 miles per hour through there, and I'm not either.
And who
At
is?
first I was, well, I do think.
Should they track
that the
that?
people, I feel like the people that know town know to go up Cross Street or one of the other streets. But I guess I do worry about the person that's frustrated in traffic, they're not from around here, and all of a sudden, maybe even their GPS might calculate some traffic stuff and be like, go this way. Or they get frustrated and they really don't know the community and they're just like, get me out of here. That's been the.
Well, when you've been backed up since Dots, that is exactly your attitude.
Right, but that's, I mean, there is that traffic
Far,
jam
but
no
it
matter
is.
what.
No, I disagree with that, because I live on North Route 1, and 3 or 4 times a day, I come into town all the time, and I have been very carefully watching the backup, which does get
Very long.
Very long. It may get as far as the Whitehall Inn.
Right.
It has happened, but you know what, I also have to be honest, 'cause at first, I was opposed to this one-way thing at first, honestly, but I have to say, I have not seen increased backup on Route 1 since we made this thing a year ago. I've not seen it.
Because most of that time has been winter.
No, I'm talking about, well,
Because if it's going to expire tomorrow,
Talking about-
we're going into the worst
talking
part.
about 12 months of monitoring from last July until now.
And
I
me
have
too.
not
I
seen
live
it.
on Bayview Street, and I spend a lot of time on C Street, so I'm coming out because Atlantic Avenue is one way, and that was a great
Understood.
idea.
I'm
I'm
t-
coming
I'm-
out, I'm taking a left, and I'm wanting to get
Yeah,
not to
I
town. I'm
understand.
trying to go to work or
I
get out.
understand. I'm talking about going south on Route 1 from Whitehall into town, which I do.
And try to get out of
that-
C Street.
That increase, that is not increased.
C Street is getting out of control.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
I'm all for bringing it back because those in the know
Thank
use
you,
it. and-
thank you. And I, yes, do you want to speak? Go ahead.
To problems, are we still on the?
Are you speaking?
I'm speaking for the status quo. I don't want you to change Central Street. I really don't. And let me just tell you, first of all, thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Chief, for getting this thing, just to take it to this experiment. I've lived on Central Street for 20 years. It is so much safer now, and we have a lot of people around, as we all know in the summertime. There's incredible amount of foot traffic there. There is still no sidewalk. There is a 90-degree turn, which you really can't see around, especially if someone at the Christian Science Church decides to park their car on the corner, which they don't do often, but they do on Sundays. You have made our neighborhood safer. It may be inconvenient. It's inconvenient for me. I mean, I live the second house up. I have to go around to get back down there. But I think it's a small price to pay. There are people in this room who have small children who live right there. And what I see now, and what I've seen since this thing went into effect, we have scofflaws. They don't give a rat's tamale about those signs out there. They don't. They just bomb right on through. I've confronted people, and I've said, look, incorrectly, that it's one way. It's really only one way at the entrance. And the answer I get is always the same, but I'm only going one way. Everybody thinks that's hysterical. I don't. So that's what we're up against. Scofflaws, too much speed. And here's the frustration, right? And you said it. You're coming down from the Whitehall. I've seen it even beyond that, too.
It does.
Traffic comes down,
It does.
and people are frustrated because all they're doing is driving bumper to bumper. They get there, right, that's right at the turn. You can look into Camden, and you can see that Camden's all plugged up. And so what do? What everybody did for years was beat feet right up Central Street. I've seen cars go by my house at 60 miles an hour. I know it's only 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, but people just, they don't give a darn about anybody else. So that's what, I appreciate what you've done, and I hope you're going to stick with it.
Thank you very much.
It's a lot safer.
Please. Isn't going to make the vote any better. Sorry.
Like one side and
Yeah,
the other side.
but I want to, is there anybody else that was opposed, was what I was asking, besides the one I've already heard? I don't see any hands, so everybody, just for individual families, how many if one vote per family, please, how many people here just want to see it the way it is because of what we just heard? Yours too. Yours too. Okay, so this is 8 or 10. Cool. Is there anybody, thank you for your input. Is there any, we understand?
All people that live on Central
Oh,
Street, too.
well, that's cool. That's fine.
I'm
I expect them to, yeah, do you all live on Central or Cross? Yes. Okay, all right. So, yeah, that's logical, and I would expect that. Is there anything that you want to add that hasn't already been stated, Pete?
Yeah, I think that Bernie's said it, everything summarized well. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that I think that as we go forward in our climate crisis, we want to be continually looking at ways to promote walking, biking. And I'm out of my garden at Cross and Central Street. For me, one way or the other, there's people coming across Central or coming across Cross Street or up Central. So it's from a traffic perspective, it's kind of a wash for me. But from a watching, as I do, sitting in my garden 2 to 3 hours a day, there's somewhere between 50 and 100 pedestrians walking up Central Street every single day. Residents, non-residents. And the residents know that if they want to miss traffic, they can come up and come across Cross Street or Trim Street.
Right.
And so I think it's been a great change, and I'd encourage you to keep it the way it is, and also look for other areas in town where we can do the same thing, promote walking, and so thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you very much. This audience belongs in the Opera House.
Funky.
You're a fun group. I'm not trying to close off anybody else's discussion, but I'd like to get some feedback from the board members as to what their thinking is regarding this current situation, and we can also talk about the one submission also that was given to us that's against the.
Yeah, I'll
I think
start.
somebody should read this.
I think we will. I was intending to.
So, did you want to, were you going to read this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Bob?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. So, and then I have a comment on this because I'm worried that there's confusion. So we did receive a letter from the executive board of the First Church Christ Scientists in Camden. First Church of Christ Scientists Camden, located at 1 Central Street, would like to share some of our concerns with the select board concerning the one-way road change. Highlighted as inhibited handicap access. Our church welcomes several members and attendees who use handicap accessible entrance on the street level. In order for people to safely get out of the car on the correct side, vehicles need to enter from the Route 1 entrance. Currently, cars dropping off people in wheelchairs need to either back up the road or have passengers get out of the incorrect side of the car, causing potential safety issues. Second, highlighted is inhibited access for new visitors. We welcome many visitors to our church throughout the year, but especially in the summer months. We have heard from many visitors how they were confused about how to get to us. Several people have missed or been late to services due to location confusion. Next is inhibited access for public parking lot. We are grateful to have a decades-old relationship with the town, allowing parking in our lot in exchange for plowing and maintenance. With one-way access, the public lot is harder to get to and not as accessible as overflow parking for downtown. Next is alternatives to a one-way road, local traffic only, speed bumps, flashing speed limit signs, occasional police presence for monitoring speed. We appreciate the opportunity to work together on this issue. Please keep us informed with any future changes. In parentheses, we were not contacted about the possibility of the road becoming one-way or even notified when the change occurred. The sign just appeared one day, in parentheses. As a long-time member of this community, we feel it's important to preserve safe and easy access to our building. Again, that's the executive board at the First Church Christ Scientist.
Thank you.
So just first, the point that I was going to make about, I'm worried about the confusion that it is a two-way street currently. You can't enter from Route 1 the way it is, but it's two-way access. So I just wonder if there's confusion based on the way that this letter is worded.
I don't think so.
But,
Is that they have to back up, like a handicapped accessible van?
Yeah,
trying to-
that's what the issue is, I believe.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. That can be.
Anyway, so
should be able to be
just for the record,
reconfigured.
they sent that. I'm born and raised in Camden, moved away for a while and moved back 3 years ago. Very familiar with the frustration that comes with traveling south on Route 1 in the summertime. It is the way of our community. And the people in the know that know how to skirt downtown if you want to. I think it's just as easy to take a right on Mountain Street and a left on Cross. I don't think we've changed the ability to avoid downtown at all. I think my concern is, I'm in favor of keeping it the way it is permanently. My concern is that how is the example that we set for the rest of the community and how we will apply precedent to other neighborhoods. I think some of us have bounced this around. I think the big thing that end of Central Street and the way that it affects traffic is it goes right up against the worst part of Route 1. And I think that makes a big difference between that part of Central and other streets that may want to do traffic calming, but specifically that tail end of Central where it abuts Route 1 is naturally congested. And I think that is a good reason and a good enough reason for me to keep it the way that it is.
Jenna.
So I recognize Kathy's concern, and that was initially my concern as well. This is very anecdotal. I drive an antique car most of the summer. I go that way a lot. I've not sat long enough for my car to overheat. I don't feel that it's an issue. I think it's helping a lot of people in the neighborhood. I find personally, I use Hardin. I don't know how that's impacted other streets. It would be nice to hear from residents on other streets if that has been an impactful situation for them with traffic. But I personally feel that what I'm hearing here tonight is that the positive outweighs the negative, and my observation echoes that, as anecdotal and slim as it may be. So I'm in favor.
I have to look at it. I have a perspective, I think, that Taylor shares with me, that I'm sure some other people do, is I lived in Los Angeles for 35 years. And if you think the traffic on Route 1 is bad, you have no clue. No clue whatsoever. I go back twice a year for business, and it's worse than it's ever been. I have to, in this situation, I always have to remember when I first moved to the real estate agent said, oh, when it backs up, you'll learn how to get around. And I thought, yeah, ridiculous, it's not a problem. And I've learned those ways. But I also find that sometimes I forget to turn off and come up a different way, and it causes me 2-3 minutes difference. And I have to look at the difference between inconvenience of 2 or 3 minutes and safety. And safety wins every time. And I think that's,
Please.
I don't think there's any way to replace it. It's a bit inconvenient, and sometimes I get stuck, and it takes me an extra couple minutes, but it's not that big a deal.
Thank you, Mark. Ms. McKellar?
The amount of time we've been talking about this issue, I wanted to just put it out to voters because I was so sick of talking about it. I've had my opinion changed multiple times. At first, I saw it as a, part of the broader issue in Camden, which is government, town ordinances and government trying to solve problems for a very few people at the, to the detriment sometimes of the whole group, and just, the vocal minority, and, we always have to compromise until everybody's happy, and it's always the people whose home is right there who care the most, and so they win because they have the most, endurance, and then before you know it, we don't have, gas stations or restaurants or anything down here. That said, I also think that we're like in a constant war between vehicles and pedestrians, and that I am in favor of trying to, when there are opportunities to switch, to move the bar one way or the other so that people's calculus is changed. Is it easier to walk downtown, or is it easier to drive? And sometimes it's a very small thing that pushes one way or the other. I see it for myself, and a lot of the time I'm running so late that I end up having to get my car. But I think in this particular case, the right thing to do is to leave it the way it is, one way, so that, because of the walking thing, I have friends on Cross Street and all over, and my kids walk, and it's really the only logical way to walk from a variety of places. I don't think we should ever do speed bumps. I don't think we should get into doing this more. I don't know what you meant by, Pete, by doing it more, but I don't see this as a model to replicate at all. I've been glad to see the people on Cross Street parking their cars on the street a little bit more. I found it really frustrating at the beginning when this came up, and people would not want to park, there's a clear solution to get people to go slower sometimes, and that's to park your cars on the street. Absolutely. And then people said, but then we can't get two cars through at the same time. And it's like that, yeah, that's the point, because people react to that danger. They don't want their car to get hit. And so I think we need to make things, more convenient for pedestrians and less convenient for cars. And
Cool. Yeah, and to echo off that, segue right off that, I would agree. It's very difficult for us in the select board to make safety decisions, what's safe and what's not safe. It's a very relative term. So the sidewalk speed, yeah, I get all that, but I also get the frustration of people who have noise problems and blah, blah, blah. But we have to deal with what's more quantitative, much more definable. And what is in this situation is this thing started with a cross-street issue about running stop signs of speed. That's where it started, right? And we started an experiment with doing this Central Street thing. Well, what do you know, in my mind, it's morphed into an issue of safety at the intersection of Mountain, Central, High, and Main. Am I missing anything? And I have to agree that I'm very experienced doing it a few times a day during heavy traffic times. I do know to go up right on Mountain. I also know to go up Hardin Street. And so one of my concerns was that this would squeeze into a Hardin Street problem. So I watched that this weekend. It hasn't. The reason is only a few of us know really about it. And secondly, to what you just mentioned, the Hardin Street people are very good at parking on Hardin Street. And the speed that I was driving and others were about 25. So we went up to Cross Spring, across that way, up to where I was going. But the issue to me, and this is the rest of the town, I want to be clear on this because this may come up on other areas in town, and I think it's very important to understand from my perspective, this is all about the safety of that intersection. And I cannot adjudicate personally on whether safer, nicer, better. There are debates about that on the Central Street itself. So from that perspective, I originally was against continuing with it because restrictions can sometimes morph into a bigger issue. It won't here because I feel very confident that the safety at that multiple intersection is key. So I would support continuing to keep it the way it is. No, don't do that. I'll have to, no. If I said I want to get rid, you're going to boo me? Just, no, I'm sorry. Probably.
watch out,
So
Bob.
unless the chief, you have anything to add to what I just said, I know we've discussed this with you. There's no substantive data that points either way on this change. Okay, I just wanted to make sure you had your 2 cents or 3 cents as it may be, and I would revert to action by the select board.
We need to word this a certain way.
Yes, I mean, well, not really. What I guess the motion would be to continue the current configuration of Central Street until further notice.
I'll make a motion that
Put it on a list of.
I'll make a motion that we continue the current configuration indefinitely.
Second.
Discussion. Those in favor? 5-0. Thank you all for coming.
After we made that decision last year, I thought
I'm just no more
I
budget, okay.
was like, I thought I was going to be burned at the stake. And now, having driven it a few times, I sit there and my red MG, which overheats in like a second, and it's fine. I've been meetings with.
I just want to tell you, democracy works. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Well, have a good night.
This is the first year that my granddaughter, who's 13, was able to walk downtown.
Thanks, guys.
A wreck all the time. Cars two ways. And
No big deal. It's no big deal. We do hard if we get impatient at all. And there's so many other options. We jump on Harden if we get impatient. We hardly ever.
Yeah, I was won over on it slowly but surely. So Pete convinced me one day in his.
Deer Isle, Bucksport, and Belfast twice in the last 6 days. And so I've had to, and I've not seen it.
Right, and with no sidewalk there, it really
I've not seen anything concerning.
I'm going to do another slight revision because I don't think Beth and Holly should stay any longer, and to bring the snowball budget into the next item on the agenda. If it's okay with you all. And Jody too.
No, Jody has to stay. So.
Oh my, I'm feeling like
evening.
grumpy right now, so I have to try to.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Don't be grumpy.
Yeah.
Over 62,360 and 64 cents in the black.
I know.
Is that the final?
Yes, it is.
Woo!
Clap.
61, you were 60,
That's grumpy.
61,000 ahead of budget.
62.
62,000 ahead of
Yes.
budget. Thank you.
Why do you like that better than in the black?
We'll talk later.
Okay.
Head of budget. Okay.
Anyway, keep going.
We're not talking about FY19's budget, we're talking about FY20 budget.
Okay.
So, but I wanted to give you that good news. Because we are doing the surplus a little different, it's included in the FY20 budget. Well, part of it is, 43,000 is included in the revenue. So.
Well, what's that, Beth?
So in the past, when the Snowball would have a surplus, the manager would have to come to you folks and ask you what to spend the surplus money on, or should we put it in a reserve account? You know, we talked about what to do with that money. So you will see in the Snowball's FY20 budget,
Yep.
it is listed under administrative, there's an account. Where am I seeing this?
It's under revenues?
Yeah, and under administration, it says new, and it's use of surplus there.
Use of surplus?
And I'm requesting that we spend 40,000 to send one of the groomers off to get maintained like we did a few years ago. It's very important to keep those hydraulic pumps and everything on those grooming machines in top shape. It gets new plugs, it gets new grease, it gets a big overhaul.
It costs $43,000? 40.
About. It may be under that, but that was what the estimate is.
How often do they have to be overhauled, or should they be overhauled?
5 years, I believe, is what we've done. Yep.
This says select board, 43,000, town manager, 33,000.
I was going to ask about that.
Oh,
Why is there a difference?
We added,
should I get up?
yeah, I'm sorry,
No, it's okay.
I requested 33, and I think,
Thought I took yours.
we need two.
Well, I was going to sit down.
Lazy. Falling asleep. Go ahead.
Thank you.
So the $10,000 difference is because we want to start recognizing the expense of workers' comp, which is, it's a big part of our entire budget, let alone
Not when they put revenue in.
the
for us,
practices
right?
at the Snow Bowl. So it was decided that we would fund partial workers' comp out of the Snow Bowl because the town of Camden pays for the workers' comp for the employees at the
We
Snow
talked
Bowl.
about this in a workshop.
Yeah, we've talked
we
about
did,
this.
we did.
Okay, then that makes more sense. Then the groomer thing was 30, and
Yeah, got it,
3 was
got
set
it,
aside for, we have some wood on the bottom of the toboggan chute that is 80 years old. And so we have gone out and got some estimates on that. And that was the other thing I wanted to ask the board tonight, is we thought 3,000 might be about the right cost, but it's more about $10,000 to replace that wood and have someone come in and do it,
The wood where?
to the chute, the toboggan chute.
Before we just jump off the topic of surplus, use of surplus, whatever number we use, what happens to the rest of it?
We put it in a reserve account.
So you took 20-ish, if these numbers held, you took 20-ish and put it into the reserve in addition to the reserve we're putting aside, which is about 25K.
Yes, we would be putting that into the town's side of the reserve for the Snow Bowl.
Got it? All right, back to your comment, sorry.
So 3,000 of that was for
Of
the
the
toboggan
33,
chute.
of the 33?
Yes, or of the 43 that the select board, yes. 3 of that was for the chute repair. And we've now gotten estimates in, and it's going to be more like 10,000. And I wanted to ask the board that if we could, either use some of that surplus for that, or we had some committee members of the Toboggan Championship say, let's do a GoFundMe. There's a lot of.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, well,
I'm just setting up a Facebook fundraiser right now.
the issue that we're dealing with here is the following.
Writing.
This may not happen every year, God, do we have a $62,000
Correct.
Head of budget situation? And we do, and remember, this whole idea of having reserve is to plan for the bad year. So the more we take out of this surplus and don't keep it in the back pocket, remember, we could use surplus for anything, right?
Yeah.
So we could use it for whatever, but to use it and dedicate it now is, in my mind, is starting to fight against the idea
Well,
of
the
the
majority of the
surplus.
use of that surplus is going to go towards the groomer.
$30,000.
Yes.
Or so.
Which needs to be done.
But you're also taking 10,000 to
For the
net out,
chute.
to net out the workers' comp.
Workers' comp.
I thought that the 10,000 was for the shoot and the workers' comp is just on the expense side. When we
That's what it should be done.
Well,
In order to balance the revenues with the expenses, we had to pull another 10,000 in. When we threw the 10,000 on the expense side, we brought
So
10.
where in the budget is the budget, how much for maintenance in this budget? There's got to be a maintenance budget that's going to be covering something for next year, right? Something. Is there money in there, in those accounts to utilize, or part of it, for wood or for?
Oh, yes, there's definitely,
So it doesn't have to come out of this surplus?
and we do have a toboggan chute reserve, but I think Jody looked it up and it was like 2,500 we had in there. We could use that too, but
I mean, my only caution is planning for the rainy day.
Yes.
And you all did a great job this year, collectively, the town and all your staff and Jody, of managing this thing to a, and we want to continue that, but we don't know that's going to happen. And so I'm just really adamant about having a lot in the back pocket, which we could use for other things downstream if we so decide. But throwing them in now is emptying the bucket, and just because we have a bucket, we shouldn't use it all.
I mean, and that's fine. There's a number of ways that you can do this. Like we've budgeted 20,000 in contingency. So maybe instead of, if this makes you more comfortable, maybe instead of the use of surplus, we only do 10,000 contingency. I mean, this is what we're trying to do to.
That's exactly my point.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's a lot of different ways we could do this. Or maybe you all decide we don't want to do the workers' comp You don't want to budget the workers' comp in this year, and you want to wait till, there's a lot of different ways that we could do it.
I understood, but I think it's smarter to reduce the contingency and use that monies or other line items. But we know we have this money in the back pocket we can always utilize for a couple of things. Maintenance things we might have to do, especially if we look into next year's being really good, we don't know that now, but that's the purpose of this, managing it this way from a surplus perspective. We have extra monies. We're lucky that it's 62,000. It may not happen again.
Bob, are you saying if we take the money out of different lines and keep more in the surplus, it gives
Yes.
us more flexibility?
Yes,
I mean, only budgeting 3,500 for equipment maintenance.
that's kind of low.
Where are we looking at?
I am looking now
Saw that too.
at,
Oh, you're looking
how
at the
do-
lodge and the maintenance shop. That,
oh yeah, you can see them.
yeah.
705,
So I'm looking-
2020.
The big
Oh,
ticket,
okay,
the big
those are
ticket
the-
numbers are going to be under Alpine, that's 7015. And
Do I need to scroll up or down?
Down.
right here. So you'll see there's definitely some equipment lines lower down if you keep going. And those numbers, they're cushioned.
Yep,
So
yep.
So your toboggan chute repair, oh, so you're
Yeah.
saying you thought it was going to be 3,000, but really it's going to be 10,000. That new wood is not good. When people replace old wood with new wood, a lot of the time they regret it.
well, it's trees. It's actual logs that are holding up parts of the chute.
Probably like
80 years
better
old.
tree, old growth trees, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
And part of the expense is the engineering because.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. I
They
think-
don't, yeah, they,
I think, well, obviously, don't want to reduce the workers' comp because it's a real cost of business. And by the way, if we don't, then the town pays for it. And we're subsidizing the
Right.
snowball
Yeah, I mean,
indirectly. But
we're not helping
we're
anyone.
covering with revenue. That's cool. I understand that. But I think the idea of reducing contingency from, 20 to 10, that's great. That's what we should be doing. Is tighten the belt and keep that money in reserve for going forward.
I've got some devil's advocate questions.
okay.
This year, the comments I've gotten this year, the production, the snow production that you did was extraordinary. Incredibly well done, done in the right places, used the right way. All the people I know that do it said it was about as perfect an execution as you can have. One of the reasons we're able to do that is because we had an unusually cold winter, December, which allowed to do that. We also, for 2 years now, have had exceptional storms in March, which have really made the difference. There's no question, watching the weather around the world, watching the weather around, that at some point, we're not going to have those lucky months. And my question is, as the budget continues to creep up and up, what's the preparation for a bad year?
Putting in the reserve.
Hopefully
money.
putting this money.
It's, if we don't
Making-
have a cold December, and you can't make the snow, so we don't have those months, it could be, just having a small reserve. I want to know, what do you do just besides spending the money that we have in reserve? Do you have plans to how to change things around? And the other question I have is, I keep getting questions. This year in March was handled much better than last year in terms of being prepared for the spring storms. But I kept hearing from people, we could have skied even longer. And so what I'm looking for is just some advanced preparation for if things are bad or if things are good. And that's sort of what I'd like to make sure that people are thinking about so that we're prepared for whatever happens, if we have great snow or we have bad snow. And it's hard to look at that in terms of just looking at the budgets. This is what we're going to spend. And, how are we thinking about, how are we preparing for the tough times?
Yep.
That splash pool thing was really awesome. Things like that, sometimes people just
Yeah.
can't ski as much and they have to do other fun
It
things.
definitely
And
brings a fun vibe to have some of those
It's been
different
great.
activities.
Thank you for doing all those. All those little things.
I
are-
think Jody's monthly, weekly, you were doing it a lot. Reports helped
Yes.
keep us
Definitely.
in tune to where we were spending and.
Yeah, but the challenge is going to be when we hit that report that says, uh-oh, and how fast we react. That's going to be our test.
Exactly, yes.
And so that's why I keep coming back to, if I got a little bit in the pocket, then I have a little bit of leeway if I make a decision. I don't want to do a knee-jerk reaction decision to shut her down on March 1st because we're at death's door. If we're going to have 25,000 reserved plus what, another 20 or so from this year. So that's it. But plus we put 25 in the year before, didn't we?
How much do we have in there?
We've got 25,000. The FY20 appropriation for Snowball Reserve was voted 0 for reserve for FY20. So we have 25,000 in reserve plus the 20,000
So it'd be $45,000.
for surplus. So we'll
total
have
if we stay-
45,000
If we stay in this basis.
Plus, we have the contingency from.
of 20,000, yeah.
20 now, but that we could reduce that to 10 if we
No,
wanted
no,
to.
from last year.
Oh, from last
I
year.
don't think we spent it, did we?
What about all the erosion control work?
That's another thing.
Don't we still have some to pay for
Yes,
from
we do.
before and some that are is more that will have to be paid for?
Absolutely.
Is that in this budget anywhere?
That is not.
That could be another $30,000, $40,000. Another reason to have the reserve. Well, it's going to continue to erode. It's not going to stop.
I don't have, can you, Allison,
that
can you move
road?
that back to Alpine where it was? I'm sorry, I don't have where,
70-15?
yeah, right there. Go scroll down just a little bit. There's a trail maintenance.
Terrain?
Trail
Oh,
maintenance.
maintenance supplies?
What line are
It's
you?
just 7, okay.
It's 70-15. I don't see anything else in there.
I can search for the word terrain for supplies.
Well, it's-
Trail maintenance supplies.
Yeah, there's 7. I see there's 7 in there.
I don't see anything that covers that here.
So we had budgeted, what was it, the 10,000 that we'd budgeted last year for trail work?
Yep.
We discussed using that to pay for the erosion work that we've done on Northeaster, because that was an emergency situation.
We have an idea of how much
That's-
erosion control we still need to do.
There's some handwork.
Yeah.
Jeremy was going to check in with Dan Packard.
Yeah.
That's who was doing the work, and he's been waiting for the right weather. I believe he's got like a certain amount of time, but not in that massive part of the project.
Dan Ford or Dan?
Chris Packard, sorry. I'm
Packard,
sorry.
yeah.
I mixed them. I have 2 projects going on with both of them, so.
Global question. What is the total expenses of this, I can't find it, for the expenses for the snowball in this budget? Total. What number is it?
For FY20?
Expenses?
FY20. No, yeah, total expenses. You got total revenue in here at 900 and,
It's the second page.
70-35?
you had 956 budgeted for total,
55.
955, 892.
Yeah.
all right, so it's 956,000. What is the total expenses for the snowball? What are we projecting for total number for expenses for the snowball?
For FY20?
Yep.
Yep, 955, 892,
So it's a break even.
a break even.
So you meant revenue, total
Yeah,
revenue?
I'm sorry.
Revenue is 955, but is that also the number for expenses?
Revenue is 956, 300
That's right.
anticipated, and expenses 955, 892, so we are looking to make $408.
Thank you. That's what I was asking.
And I just want to clarify real quick, Audra had pointed out the contingency was not spent in FY19, but that is part of the surplus. So that is part of that 62,000, so,
Oh, it's part of the 62?
yeah,
Whoops.
so.
That's
But that's 20,000 we didn't spend.
So it was,
But
I think we should, in terms of just a small revenue item, since we do this fees at a different time than we do the budget, we should kind of try to make sure that the budget reflects any fee
Yes.
activism that we might want
see.
to. My issue is the lockers, that anything that has a really long waiting list
Yeah.
should be, because there isn't enough for all the people that want them, so the best way to decide is by raising the fees to what the market can bear. That's
see.
what, isn't
see.
the list like, I think we should triple the,
It's 100 for the season.
Yep.
in order to knock that list down, we'd probably have to.
There's only a waiting list of about 10 or 12 people.
That's
But we
not
only
what
have
I've been told. I still think we should triple it.
Okay.
And, because a lot of people,
Okay.
if like,
Okay.
don't even bother to try to get on the list.
If we chop 10,000 out of contingency, what do we do to revenue? Drop that also?
No, I'd leave it right where it is.
To you?
No reason why you can't.
Well, I mean, what, on the revenue side, actually, what you would do is reduce it by 10,000 in the use of surplus.
That's what I was saying.
Right.
That's what I was thinking.
Do we know what the impact of the free Camden days and stuff, what kind of actuals, or do we have actuals yet?
Yeah. This is so far removed from when we sat down and actually did this. I want to say we had 119 free, that's the number sticking in my head.
119 claimed.
That came in and claimed a ticket from Camden. It was definitely a wonderful buzz. We got a lot of praise for it. And I did budget very conservatively with the thought that we may lose some season pass holders.
What kind of a
If we do that
decrease did
again.
we see in day ticket sales?
We can't say that for off last year.
I know we can't make like 100% scientific whatever, but did we see a decrease in days?
I mean, we were seeing people that hadn't been out in years. We were seeing people that, look for the deal, like they don't pay the full price ticket, that were coming.
But we don't
in.
know what the actuals were for how many tickets, like day tickets we sold?
Oh, you want to know how much from,
Not from like a.
we're not talking freebie.
Not, right, like what was the decrease in sales?
You have to compare it to previous years.
I know.
We were up in sales this
We
year
didn't
and
see a
everything.
decrease in sales.
No.
But we'd
I know that
also
they-
gone into the season, they had, some folks had already purchased their passes.
Right, I understand that the concern is that people are gonna, the fewer season passes are gonna be purchased, but
Possibly, yes.
there was also a concern that people who otherwise would have bought day passes just decided to take advantage of free opportunities instead. And so it is.
119 of them came in and did that.
But the important number is whether there was a decrease in, one of the important numbers is whether that, not how many, it's not about how many free tickets we gave out, it's about
Loss of revenue.
whether that caused a corresponding loss of revenue. Did we bring in new people, or did we bring?
There was quite a few people that had never skied before.
Yeah, I don't, to your question, I don't see the loss in revenue at all. I don't see it. The season tickets, by the way, you're budgeting 258, that's pretty flat.
If we wanted to track that, we really have to start
Taking
setting
it,
some information,
it's, yeah,
collecting some
yeah.
serious data.
But I'm just trying to talk about it at the budgeting time, because then we're going to have a rate-setting discussion at a different time, which is if we, so if I don't want to handicap us by saying, oh, well, you should have brought that up at budget time, or, that sounds like you've been conservative and you're kind of expecting a status quo.
You already set the rates for this coming year when we did the,
That's right.
yes.
When we did like the
Yeah.
demo fees.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Well, the whole fee order for
All
all
the
the
fees.
town departments.
It was like
That's what I mean by the
January,
demo.
wasn't
It's
it?
January, so we can budget for
Yes.
this budget that we're talking about now, so.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
So is the only thing we're talking about is just reducing the contingency and just letting that go? That's it?
Yeah, it sounds like it, so take 10,000 out of the contingency and then,
The town had,
10,000 out of the, use of surplus.
we'll have some chunk of change in reserve for the 25, so it's 20.
Erosion issue that's like substantial, that we
worries
haven't
me a little
budgeted
bit.
for, it sounds like.
Well, no, we've,
But that was a little bit of a, to take it from the trail, we had that whole discussion about the trail maintenance and the.
Well, that's a good
we
point.
did, but, emergencies happen and you've got to use the budget that you have to.
But we're gonna then have more stuff, so aren't we gonna, we
Well,
can't,
I think that that issue, for the most part, is held out well. Like, it went through another melt this season and it didn't get any worse. Chris
Yeah.
Packard's largely fixed it.
You already have this budget where, the other thing we could do is reduce the contingency by 10 and put 10 into slope management.
I mean, erosion is like our most
Same
serious, the
budget,
spring, we're talking about spring storms, that's,
Well, but I'm saying we went through a cycle of this. The problem, they did some work on it in the fall, we went through the spring melt, we went through a very, very rainy season.
Yep.
A very rainy fall and then a very rainy spring, and it's held up. The fix is
Understanding
held
is that
up.
there's still more of a
Potential issues.
comprehensive look that is ongoing, and, I mean, that was one issue, but
Leave the budget the way it is and transfer 10,000 from contingency to erosion control.
Your mic is not on.
Oh, whoops.
What do you, that's an option. It doesn't change the numbers, just changes some accounts here.
So we're just taking 10 out of contingency, leaving 10 in contingency, and making an erosion control
Line item, maintenance.
reserve or a expense, like a.
I'd prefer it to be reserved, but I could go either way. That way it's the same net numbers.
I guess I just want to be clear on the erosion. That's kind of what I was asking earlier. Like, do we know that we have, do we know that we have erosion to deal with now? And if so, how big of a problem is that? Or is it more about planning for potentially in the spring having more erosion like we did
No,
last
there's
year?
there's a plan. There,
I mean, I'm responding to, this is from Jeremy, this isn't like made up in my head, this was Jeremy saying this should probably be brought up.
Well, Jeremy said, yes, the whole mountain probably should be looked at, but the one
think we've said that too.
northeastern area that we were
That's
worried
fixed.
about, Chris Packard still has a plan to come out when the weather is right. He's been waiting for the ground to get really dry. And he does, and the crew has some handwork to do. But from my understanding, it didn't get worse. It stayed the same after this spring, from the
Right,
the
but
spring
we
before.
have talked extensively about it, needing to look at that more comprehensively of all the, like, possible issues that could come up. So to say we've like 100% taken care of erosion, so we have enough, so we had 10,000 in that trail maintenance, is that the full, not trail maintenance, but that, whatever it was that we called it, is that the full cost of all the erosion control work that was done?
No, that was what was done last fall, before it got really rainy and he had to stop.
So we paid that out of, so we can pay $10,000 worth out of that line. Is that all, you're imagining that spent, like in last year's budget, okay, that's spent, have we paid out, how much have we paid out?
What have we paid to date?
I don't know.
Some out of last year's budget and some out of this coming year's budget?
Yes.
So where is the part that has to be paid out of this coming year's budget? I don't think should be in a reserve, it should, it sounds like we should actually budget for it.
I think expense it. I think you can expense it. You don't have to put it in reserve. That was a question. We put it in reserve or expense. I think it's half dozen.
If we know it's coming and we've already approved it.
I didn't think we knew it was coming. That's why I put it, said reserve.
Well, we don't know how much at this
Yeah.
point.
He
I
hasn't
thought-
come back and,
I mean, it's easy to transfer from reserve. 10,000 may not be enough.
I don't think it's going to be.
I don't think so either.
I don't know, but I think it's too much of a question to leave out. We know we have some more money to pay, and we,
Well, yeah, and it's just if we put 10,000
already
more,
approved.
if we put 10,000 more in reserve and we need it for that, that's what it would be for.
Nothing precludes us from using surplus money for that, though, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Or the other option is put a line item in that says, slope management and put 10,000. It's the net's the same thing. It just gives, but the issue is when you put it in reserve, and the reserve is going to be then $55,000, I think we put, all right? No, it's 45,000. 45,000. We have 45,000 reserved to deal with to attack any single issue. It could be slope maintenance, it could be other equipment, it could be whatever the heck we want to do with it. It's a philosophical difference. It's not substantive. I don't care which way it goes.
I like the idea of having it in surplus so that.
I think it's easier.
Any contingency.
If you knew,
does that get spent? Don't we have to, doesn't the select board
You
have to
vote on
approve
it.
that?
we have
So
to come.
just to pay the work that's already been approved and bid out, so we are going to have a special, it's going to have to be an agenda item just to pay what we've already committed to paying.
We already had a plan for how, this is so long ago, I'm having a hard time remembering
Yeah,
exactly the
I
sources
believe
of
that-
funding that we
I believe that was covered.
identified,
I
yeah.
thought that was covered. What
was
the current
covered.
work total was covered. I don't remember where it was either.
It was bits and pieces from different areas.
That's what I
That's what
thought.
I thought it was.
That's
Yeah.
what I thought.
I mean, there's.
I don't think we needed 10,000 we're putting aside to pay for what current work. I don't believe that. We can confirm that. But it'd be safe, I don't know, safer to put in reserve, in my opinion.
I mean, it would, I guess it would, if there's, you know, if he gets up there and we find that there's something above and beyond what
Right.
we'd already
Right.
expected when we accepted that quote.
Then we'll,
Have a quote, and we know,
I
I'm
know-
hoping we
I
know how
know
much
we
we've already
came here.
And I
paid.
came to all of you and I said, this is the plan
did.
for how we're going to fund
You did.
this.
I
You all
believe
approved it.
you.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
Just
because
do
I'm
not-
having a hard time remembering myself exactly what the lines were at the time, because this was over a year ago now.
we should think about this 10,000 as being for something we don't know about yet, not for something we already knew about.
That's my point. But I think that probably does all leave, unless we know somewhere from last year that, I don't know, it just seems like a reasonable question to bring up during budgeting time.
Sure.
And
Sure.
No, I think
the
it's a
response of
reasonable
like stopping
question.
annoying Allison
Yeah, it's a
is-
reasonable question.
I think it's
Well, I
reasonable.
mean, you got two or three options. We can either do the 10,000 thing wherever we want to put it. We could do more. We could grab another account, but the monies we're putting aside should be for stuff we don't know about yet.
I did find some things.
Oh.
Real quick. I hope it's what we're looking for. From Audra. We have approval to use 25,000 in the Snowball Reserve and 6,000 from the Select Board contingency in the general fund budget. I think we should take out of the Snowball Reserve first. This was back in October,
Yep,
so.
That's been paid.
I remember
It
that.
was like a
How
weird
much do we take
number.
out of the reserve to pay? Been paid
We've
out.
spent less than $200 out of the reserve.
So how much have we paid this guy so far?
We haven't paid.
I don't think he's billed us for the work yet.
Are we talking, what's his
Packard.
Packard? Yeah, I don't think we've paid him anything. I mean, I
Okay,
can-
so what was I guess that means it was 30,000.
31.
31. If that was the quote and we haven't paid any of it, that means that our final in the black ahead of
No,
budget
no, no,
number
no.
from
This
last
is,
year?
no. This is out of different, this is the general fund budget. This isn't the snowball budget.
Which I had an issue with, but that's.
Yeah, well, that is a larger issue, so now.
It is. It is. So back to the $10,000, whatever it is, it's going to either be put in reserve or you put it into its own line item for future slope management work, not for current.
I mean, it really depends on what you want to do
I mean,
because,
just like to put something aside for future slope management, and the question is, where do you put it? And all we have identified so far is $10,000 out of contingency.
yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is, like, you can put it in a separate line, or
Yeah.
you could just leave it in contingency and, you know,
You could do that too.
vote to spend it later. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of.
That comes down to a control issue. How much do we want to control? When you put it in reserve, we have more control. When you put it in a budget, you don't have control over it. You do,
Sure,
which is fine with me too.
and Beth,
Well, the whole gang, that's the difference.
and Jody.
So how much money in the general fund is in Snowball Reserve now?
Well, if we spend that 25,000, I think that's,
right now, we have $24,872.20.
Zero.
That was as of June 30, 2019. So
not quite
then
enough.
we'll be dumping another approximately 20,000 from the Snowball surplus into that. So
Okay.
then we'll be up to
45.
around 45,000.
And how much is in select board contingency from last year?
Lots.
Because I think we paid,
I think there's
Damn.
around 60,000 in there,
Does-
because we carried some from FY18.
Okay, but to the 45, do we have to pay out 25 to this contractor when he bills us?
Say that again?
Of the 45 total that we have.
Reserve.
In reserve, we have to pay this contractor.
we'll pay 25 out of that to the contractor,
So
and
there'll
then another 6 from
All
the.
right, so there'll only
select board
be
contingency.
20 left in the reserve.
Yes.
Correct.
Yuck.
not even enough to pay for one of those emergency,
Nothing.
Pumper
Well,
raccoon
no, that
situation.
brings me back to the debate about what the surplus paid in the previous year should be used for. And we're using it to do a groomer at $33,000 or so. And then we're using it to fund workers' comp thing. We're using the surplus up is what we're doing. That's not safe.
Is there any chance to increase revenues more with like,
Oh, it's dangerous too.
I know, but the lodge rental, I understand it's not smart to be overly optimistic with revenue projections, but the budget is also kind of a policy document. And so we're budgeting 8,000 in lodge rentals. Actuals are like 10 from 2018. I'm totally off this.
Jody, the current surplus you mentioned of 20, almost 25,000, does that include the 25 we're putting into an FY '20 in reserve also, or not?
FY '20 was voted to zero.
Thank you, you said that before.
I guess if you're very concerned about this, one thing you could do is that we haven't spent a lot out of contingency this year, select board contingency. So you could vote to carry forward some of that balance and put it into
Well, it's just
the
more-
reserve.
Used it for the dams.
That's more funding for the, now we're back funding the snowball again.
Well, but this is always going to be,
Well,
the challenge.
the objective is and was to build up reserves for a rainy day. And what I'm hearing right now is we won't have much of reserve left for the rainy day. So what I'm just warning is that's going to make a decision when we hit next March 1st and there's no snow, exaggerating again. And
But I mean, what do you,
our
like,
decision is going to be a
do
week
we
away.
do the groomer or not?
Hey, there, we're back to GoFundMe.
Well, you have to do the
Well, what I'm
groomer.
saying is, we only ever had a surplus of like $60,000, and we have to do the groomer, so there's
But we were so happy,
$40,000 right
Audra.
away. Like, I mean, we just have to be realistic about what it is. Like, this is always going to be the balance, and this is always going to be the struggle, is that if you want a real healthy surplus, you really don't have much of a choice. other
It's
than-
also a park. We have to remember it's also a park.
It is,
It's not all the
How
snowball.
dire will it be equipment-wise if we do the groomer next year?
It's really, to prolong the life of them, it's time for that one to have
Yeah,
it.
it would be very unwise if we didn't do that this year.
Somebody remind me again where the park stops and the snowball begins and where that line is.
April 1st.
No.
2005, is it under Alpine?
Yeah.
Okay. But, yeah. I mean.
Sorry, I don't know.
2005.
I mean, not so much like in our fiscal year, but just in thinking about
Repairing and maintaining.
where some of this money comes from. It's always the question of what's the public park and what's the,
All right.
and the toboggan chute and all of that stuff. And so I'm just trying to, some of this stuff might be able to be done with
what we could
a
do.
little bit about spending out of the general fund, is what I'm
Gotcha,
saying.
gotcha. I agree. I think what we could do is take 10,000 out of contingency and put it on the groomer. That's where the money would come from, to make it the 43,000, not out of reserve.
I mean, it's the same money is what I'm trying to
Just sleep
say.
at
Like,
night.
it's just, you can do whatever you want, but it's not going to change the fact we only have $60,000, and no matter how you chop and change it.
Oh, I got it, but at 10,000, I'm talking about that, that was being used, 43,000 is being used from the surplus right
I mean,
now.
out of select board contingency.
43,000 right in this model is being taken out of surplus, period.
Yeah.
Which
You know what I'm saying?
surplus?
The 60-some thousand. from last
Snowball
year.
surplus.
Snowball surplus. So if you only take 33,000 out
Right.
and use 10,000 from the 20,000 contingency, make it 10, put it up there, you've got the same thing and you've got $10,000 more in reserve.
Right.
We need money in reserve. We still have the problem of no back pocket for slope stabilization. We're going to have to take the chance.
Take that out of reserve if we have to.
We're going to have, if something
Or you
happens, we're
could
going to
spend
do
it
it.
out of select board
That's, we
contingency.
can,
You
that's
got
that's a
you got
future
few
discussion.
options.
I just feel really uncomfortable with having this reserve thing too low, because I know what it's going to mean in March 1st, when we have to make a decision next week, you're going to shut down. We don't want to do
Right,
that.
but I guess my point is, like, unless you're buffing it up with money from the general fund,
I get it.
all we're ever going to have is that
$60,000.
$60,000 minus the 30 for the, like,
That's fine.
I can't make money out of thin air. That's like what we have.
But that gives us 30,000, approximately 30-something
Right.
thousand dollars in reserve, and that's fine. That's
Right.
all we can do right now.
Right, exactly.
We also have the option, because we'll be talking about the carry forwards
Yep.
in the next
Yep.
month or so, that
Yes.
the select board
Yeah.
contingency could be part of that.
Yeah, I would suggest we take that and make sure we have at least 30 left over in the reserve, in the town reserve. And we have the 43 here for whatever we do, but 10 of it, reducing contingency by 10 and making that the 43 work.
Right.
All right?
So does that make sense?
Not really.
Okay, so the
Sorry.
the contingency, or the use of surplus, instead of being 43, it'll be 33.
Okay.
And then the contingency will be
Another 10.
10, not 20.
We're still all in the snowball budget right now, that's what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Be 10. And then are we still keeping the erosion control at 10? Or are we not doing anything with
We
that?
we
Okay.
can't. I think we're going to have to take, it's not identified yet. I agree, it's going to be identified.
And there's a quote, and we approved it, and
Well, you're talking about last year's or this year's? We don't know going forward if there's any more slope stabilization we need to do. We don't know that now, I don't think. I anticipate there will be, and I just think we have to take a chance and go forward with it. And just see.
and maybe it's a parks expense. I don't know.
Well, there's all kinds of other ways we can
So it's a
attack it.
special town meeting.
We don't know if it's 5,000 or 50,000. We don't know. So let's wait and see until something hits the fan. Future. That's all I'm saying.
Or we could, yeah.
So there's just one change, that one big change to the budget.
And
Is
can
what I
we
said.
increase the expected revenue for the lockers? I don't-
$20,000.
To what?
From 3,
It's
40
8,000.
lockers?
Locker rent is 3,800 currently.
so can we?
Assuming that the market bears tripling it.
I
Remember
think
when
we
had
talked about this, and
before,
I think you
we
said
weren't agree-
150, but that's off my
Okay.
memory.
I have an email somewhere. I remember that we agreed, though, I think.
What do you want to increase it to?
She wants to triple it.
Well, that's what I say now, but I thought about it. I had thought about it more before, so I'd prefer to go with what I thought before,
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
I don't know, I mean,
I recall 150 on my paperwork, I remember writing it, but you may have come back and said 200 or something like
well,
that.
Holly's giving me different numbers for the waiting list now, so.
I like the idea of
I
tripling
was
our
told it was a
revenue, but I
huge-
feel like the
That's too much.
reaction to tripling it is going to have an impact on
No, but
whether or
it's
not
the
people
same
actually pay
concept,
for it.
but
We can go up
Look, I
a
found the
small
email.
increment, like
Yeah, we're de-
150.
We're dealing with
And then if-
$3,800 here. Do we
200
want to
the
increase
next
it
year.
slightly? Do we want to increase it into what? Or not?
If we come in, well, she already did,
you
I
said
think,
only a
that.
few lockers a year get turned over for the lotto. There's a huge need for more. I've done a little research on outdoor lockers, pretty expensive. In the meantime, does it make sense to significantly raise the price? You said, Allison, we didn't get to the locker fees last night. Should we raise these? And I said, I totally forgot to bring it up, and I said, I think we could go up to 150. Oh, you said, no, you said, I think we could go up to 150. And I said, that makes lots of sense to me, exclamation
Is
point.
that a
I like it.
50% increase?
Yeah, so down from 300 to 50.
So you're adding, you're adding,
at 100.
you're adding.
I'm excited.
You're adding $1,900.
Okay, but it's the
If you want.
principle that matters.
Do what you want. Make them.
We might need that $1,900 for some
For some erosion
thanking
control.
me later.
I
How long
guarantee
have the
it.
lockers been at $100?
It's from the beginning.
I like the idea of 50% though, because if we can test the market this year, right? So if they're full again,
tell you
then
what's
we
gonna
can
happen.
do it again next year.
I will pay $200 for a
So am
locker.
I adding, putting it to 5,700 this year? For this year? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so those are 3 changes then total, as I heard. Any more changes? No, your motion?
And we already approved the fees, though.
No. Motion to approve with those modifications.
I would make a motion to approve the snowball budget with the 3 modifications made during this discussion.
Second.
Discussion. Favor? 5-0. Thank you so much.
Do I have permission to do a GoFundMe page for the toboggan chute repairs?
As long as I get half.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do have a couple things. Number one, thank you, Holly and Beth, for your help with Jazz in June. I thought the 2 events there went really well. Did you have any feedback on it?
The only feedback we got was because of the school's graduation getting pushed, a lot of people had a lot of things going on. And they felt that if it was a week later, more people could attend.
They might have moved, I can't remember. if they
Part of the
moved.
point is to get people here before.
No.
Yeah.
They-
You can't really force them when they're tied up with school. I think we gotta have jazz in July.
I think they're,
when the
well,
town meeting
one of
is.
the reasons
Yeah,
it came
so it
out is
works
because
fine.
once you hit July, things were already busy. It was to try and bring stuff.
Blues Fest is the first
Yeah.
weekend after
Yeah.
the 4th.
Yeah, I think they tried to, I think they're away from the graduation next year. I don't remember exactly. But I know
But
it was-
somebody checked, it's good.
It was,
Yeah.
it was discussed, and I don't remember what the result was. Number two, and I hate to bring it up again every year, any more discussion, any plans on Tubing Hill?
Yeah, totally.
We've talked about it. I've asked Ian at the Land Trust if he had any adjacent land that he thought would be good for Tubing Hill. There's just no good space. The only space that I could come up with is to have a conversation with Goose River and rent their hill and their parking lot and lights. But, I mean, it's moving lots of equipment over there and having people there and.
Why can't we move the magic carpet back where it was? The Mighty Mike was.
It's such a good place.
It's awful. It's torture for parents to walk all the way over there right now.
We can have the discussion, but it means digging up the vault house. There's electricity that will have to be moved. There's quite a bit to move that conveyor.
I mean, the time is, it's, the go-tubing place in China is gone, so there's nowhere else doing it, so. What?
Is there a place in Wyndham that's still big?
There was a place in South China called Go-Tubing.
Sorry.
And that was like the only.
I thought that's where you're getting the tubes from China. or
He called me,
something.
he wanted to sell me everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
I wasn't
it makes
thinking
sense
China,
to
Maine. I was thinking
invest, because I think you can have a little
Trump and
market,
his
corner of a market,
tariffs.
but
Why don't we just take a future action item to take a look at options and what it would cost, just.
Other town property.
Or also just what it would
Also,
cost
to move it.
Move
to
it back.
Yeah, let's
I
look
mean,
look at all the options and just quantify them to some
I think
degree.
doing it somewhere else would
Yeah, we need
create
to-
more than,
yeah.
but
I
it's
think
something that comes up every year.
It is, it's a fun thing to have.
It's like
Passing along,
the average
passing along,
person.
getting beat up about it every year, so.
Thanks, Beth,
Yes,
thanks,
you're
Holly,
welcome.
thanks so
Thank you,
much.
guys.
And we feel really good about a fundraiser for the shoot. I think that there could be a lot of individuals as well as businesses that would really glom onto that, so maybe it should be very positive, I would think.
I agree.
Maybe they can carve their name in or something.
Onward and upward to a discussion on
Thanks, guys.
the seekers in Portland. Audrey, you want to lead that, or do you want to lead it, Alice? I don't care.
Let's let Audra lead it.
All right, that's a
Or, I
good
don't
idea.
know. I
That's-
mean, we
Well,
can-
tell us about, Audrey, you did some investigation, it's basically, it's
I mean,
here.
very,
This
very.
doesn't,
That's
right,
cool,
and this
that's
is just
cool.
an introductory, run it by the select board kind of thing,
Absolutely,
not a
absolutely, understood.
formal plan.
So-
No, understood,
I
understood.
think there's been a lot of discussion about how there are a lot of, there's a lot of pressure right now on should we let,
Yeah, and also, yeah.
Thanks, guys. All right, Audra.
so there's been a lot of pressure on the city of Portland because
Sure.
they've seen, 300 asylum seekers
300.
enter the city from the Democratic Republic of Congo as
Yep.
well as
Yep.
Angola. So, a lot of towns in Maine, they're trying to help support Portland because they're, as the host community for all of these new arrivals to the state, it's a lot of responsibility to, host all of these people and help them get to a point where they can, establish their lives here. So, a lot of other municipalities have done what they can to try and support the city of Portland. And I think that just led to a discussion about, what kind of role does Camden want to have in this? And, what kind of support do we want to role as a town could we offer, just, what might we want to do? And I did, on the MMA website, something did come up that, Portland's been overwhelmed with a lot of people offering things and volunteer time. And so they've said right now, while we're kind of getting everything set up, we're only accepting, cash donations.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Right, I mean, I think the range of responses could go from a, letter of support and enthusiasm from the Camden Select Board, just saying, that we, are encouraged by the response from the city of Portland, and, we join them in, solidarity philosophically.
Welcoming new Mainers.
Right. A fluffy statement, there was.
Without a,
That was the.
some cash would be.
But at the same time, I do think we should recognize that I think what they've done has been really brave. And it's an opportunity for us to put not really our money where our mouth is, but it's, this welcoming statement and all these things that we do. And here's an actual opportunity to be welcoming. And so there are a lot of people that wanted to collect items. Because of the work I do with Syria, lots of people contact me thinking that I must, be a direct line to all of these things. Not surprisingly, they've become sort of overwhelmed by in-kind donations like that. I met with Kit Harrison, who is really involved in the entire immigrant community. She is the editor, I believe, or has a position of significance at, what is the newspaper right there? This is a publication that I had sort of seen around town, but hadn't really looked at carefully, and it's really something. It's the whole purpose of it is to try to educate and connect and help people understand why are people coming to Maine? What are the stories of these people? It's in 3 different languages and sort of goes back and forth. And it was, take a look at it, it's all over the place. But so she sent me a sort of a summary of all the different things that she's heard. There are about 200 people in the expo right now. They only have a month or 2 left. I forget what the exact number.
Like a month.
Right, because basketball season starts, and so they are going to be looking for different housing opportunities. A lot of the time, people don't want to come here because what they want is to be in a community where there are lots of other people from their country. But I have people contact me all the time asking how they can invite a Syrian family or a refugee family to live in their house. And I'm always like, well, that's not what we do with New Day Syria. And so I know that there is strong interest in the community. And Kit is a great resource. So she's offered to let, just in the interim, if people contact us, we can put them directly in contact with her. Yep, she was really involved with the.
You put that on the website?
Yeah, I mean, that would be great.
It's an info thing.
Yeah. So some of the other ideas that have been kicked around would be, having Audra just officially reach out to the city of Portland. They said lots of people, lots of towns have done that. And, it is appropriate and encouraging for them to hear these types of things. And there's a council of towns, some of them, I think it was South Portland.
GPCOG, Greater
Right, so
Portland
they,
Council of
a bunch
Governments.
of them have done things. And one thing that we talked about was even just a day trip. We were to say, hey, you've got it's mostly in this particular group, it's mostly families, and it's mostly pretty educated people is what we've heard. It's asylum seekers, not refugees in the economic sense so much. So we've got all these kids that are stuck in this place, and so for us to say, hey, if they're a family or 2 or 5 or however many we could handle that wanted to come see a show at the Opera House, or arrange a tour of Curtis Island, or that would be a sort of a welcome to Maine. Hey, get to know the state. That might be.
Well, it seems like, obviously Portland sounds like at the moment we're trying to figure this out. Am I getting that right? Yes. And that shouldn't take them that long, because they got a trigger. It sounds like this. What's the center called? With this thing now?
The Portland Expo.
Yeah. So it seems like just to monitor the situation for sure. Put the information on the website about Kit, about contacting if anybody has any questions. But we can monitor and see what they're thinking. And they're
working on freeing up, and it looks like they have possibly freed up some money for security deposits and rent for people. And so just, looking out for empty houses. The other component of this is that we really do have a people shortage and a labor shortage in Maine. And so how many people have we heard complain about a lack of skilled workers to do everything from plumbing to, all kinds of things. People, inns are panicking every year about not being able to find people. It's this constant thing. And so, we should be.
Is there a funding site that they've set up that we could put on our website, put on our Facebook page, and just make people aware of?
Right now, the most recent thing that I saw today was like let's just let things settle a little bit before a specific call for fundraising here or there. But, I think what we're the reason for putting it on the agenda tonight is just to offer encouragement for Audra and a little bit of town staff time, just to be supportive, and maybe at the next meeting or whenever is appropriate to bring to us, if there are action items that come to the surface as potentially helpful.
Well, as long as staff time, what's little, I don't know. But
Just not that much time, but
there you go.
mostly symbolic.
I get that, but I think, Audra, you have the connection through MMA and also the connection to Portland. I think over the next couple of weeks, maybe just monitoring what's going, besides the website stuff and all that kind of thing we can do. That's a good idea. And Mark's idea too, if they're doing a funding thing. But determine, what sounds like we're getting close to than having more formative ideas on how it's going forward. And I think we may be able to more proactively react at that point in time. Like right now, it just seems like we're hoping, there'll be opportunities, and there should be.
Well, it's, kind of have to organize in the background a little bit to put out feelers of, okay, are there people that would want to offer temporary housing? Are there?
That's the purpose of the website idea, to put KIT on the website and say, if you are, please respond. I think that's a good idea.
Right.
And let's try to get that information out to people. We could even have somebody put in the newspaper for an article that says, that go to the Camden website, and see if you want to talk to somebody about your interest, citizen, resident of Camden or area, to contact this person. But in the meantime, I think we got to monitor the situation. See, it seems like Portland is straining and trying to figure out where to go left, right, or in
Yeah,
between.
it's hard because this is not
It's hard.
something that Maine has ever
No,
dealt with before. We don't
no.
have the infrastructure for it. Like the city I worked in Australia, it was the second largest city in
Yep.
Australia for refugee and
Yep.
asylum seeker settlement. So they have this whole,
Really? That's
oh yeah,
where you were?
yeah, in Logan.
Oh, so okay.
Yeah, but we had a whole network of service providers.
Exactly,
There's a whole like social housing system set up
Attorneys
around
was a
it.
big thing that she said,
But
that
there
they're
was
having trouble finding
but
immigration attorneys.
even with all that support, one of my colleagues, he was from Sierra Leone, and he came to Australia when he was like 12 years old. And he said that, there was all this support around him. When they went to the grocery store for the first time, they bought cat food and ate cat food for like a month because it was the cheapest thing that they could find. And they didn't have, even with all of this support for, this is how you live in Australia and pay for an apartment and pay your bills and do this and that. They just weren't told these sorts of things. So, it's like a real community effort to get people doing, just those simple things that we all take for granted.
Do you think by our next meeting, you will have a better idea of recommendations for us?
I mean, I just think that, since it's the early days with Portland setting itself up to be a place that can, accommodate people who are, coming from other countries and.
Tough one.
Yeah, I mean,
Real tough
it's a big deal for the state. It's a different position than we've ever been in before.
It could take longer than a month.
Yeah, it's gonna take some time, but I think we'll have a better idea of like what the plan is because.
I would think so too.
300 people aren't gonna stay in one city, so.
We would be.
They are looking, they already said they are looking.
We would be
outside.
committing some time to put something on our website. We're already committing something to do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If there are citizens here who are interested in, using their encouraging them to contact KIT, whatever this should be, I think we should start there. but, and, maybe next select board, the one after, what's going on? We should keep it on the monitoring list.
And when I hear about staff time, I think just to monitor, to reach out, to continue to.
Yeah, we gotta be careful with
That's
that.
what I think of as, and to
Yes.
make those connections and foster them, and
Yeah.
when a formative idea
Right.
comes forward that's actually truly meaningfully helpful, that then we discuss it at board
Your
level.
world is the world of controlling staff and the time. That's your world, all right? And all I'm saying is, I always said that, is I've gotten sandbagged before by saying, let's do a bunch of ordinances. And we turn around and say, oh, damn, we lost, I'm exaggerating to make a point here. I don't see that happening here, but that's my sensitivity, and I just want to be careful. We just.
And if I think it's turning into something bigger than what we've discussed
Well,
here,
we'll
we can
talk.
always come back and talk about
I
it.
think we should anyway.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is, to me, is about sending an actual message of just, it makes a difference for people that have just arrived here to read in the paper, not that, like, Mid-Coast Maine is terrified that, we're not holding a meeting saying, how can we make sure they don't come here?
Right,
But we're putting it on our agenda that just makes it.
Resource page.
If,
Frederick could easily write a letter to her cohorts in Portland saying, Camden's paying attention here, keep us informed. Just a, proactive letter that says we're with other towns and we're monitoring it, so, keep us in the loop. In the meantime, this is what we're doing in Camden, we're putting something on our website so that people can contact a person who, is encouraging anybody who's interested in Camden and exploring this option, but they can't explore anything until Portland opens the gate.
I like that.
what if we, just giving like free tickets to the Opera House and things like that to fill empty seats? That could be a
That's a
cool
possibility
thing.
downstream.
Just a little-
That's, you open up dialogue with Portland, we can have the discussion.
Cultural type
Yeah. But I think the letter from you, I think the stuff on the website, let's just do that to start and keep monitoring. I'll put it on the agenda again in a couple of
Start.
weeks, or maybe the 1st of August, no, wait a minute, but I'm lost.
Whenever it's appropriate, whenever there's something
10
to
o'clock
bring.
and I feel like I have
I know,
a
I
bad baseball bat
Yeah,
across my
I'm
head.
just
So, all right, let's do that, okay?
Happens in these chairs.
Then, that, okay?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, good. No,
Yes,
and then to another issue, which is should be a quick one, I hope, next to, maybe not. Mid-Coast Solid Waste tipping fee change from, actually from $100 a ton to $140 a ton.
For the landfill only.
When I'm
Sorry?
read, I'm in favor of it.
Yeah,
And we have a motion and everything.
Yeah, go.
Thanks, Owen, I think, or
Yes,
Audra.
Owen.
Oh, you did write it, did he write it
Wrote
actually?
a motion.
Okay, read it.
It's,
have it.
okay.
Wants you more explanation.
Or no, I don't know if
Are
I
we
have to, yeah, go.
ready for a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, by the
Okay.
FYI, Rockport approved this last night.
Okay. Owen did a good job with this letter, too. We, the select board members of the town of Camden, move to put forth the fee increase request of the Midcoast Solid Waste Corporation approved at their June 26, 2019 meeting. That fee increase being for construction and demolition debris added to the facility landfill and going from a rate of $100 per ton of material to $140 per ton of material.
Second.
The Midcoast Solid Waste Board has already talked about this ad nauseum, and this is where y'all landed.
Well, we did.
Approved at their June
We,
26.
It's a little bit
They
of
were,
a
they were
radical.
pretty nimble. Everybody would move pretty quickly on this, I think.
Should have done it during budget time. because
Absolutely.
we
Yes.
made
Absolutely.
a massive revenue hit with this kind
have
of.
to monitor this.
But it's worth it. I've been wanting this piece to go up for so long, so.
Did I hear a second? Did I miss that?
Yeah, it was seconded.
Okay, any discussion? All's in favor? 5-0. Oh, I can't see your arm go up. Okay, 5-0. Cool. To the appointment, my fun one, the appointment of the last Charter Commission member.
I have an opinion on
Well,
this.
I do too, and one of the things, because it's very difficult to choose between these two characters.
I know it is.
One of the things I thought about today was.
Neither of them have
No,
made
not-
any effort to contact
Well,
us and.
no, I know,
like,
but.
lobby us.
Lowry has contacted me.
Yeah, Larry would be my
The-
choice,
the-
but
the-
only because I know him better.
The select board to date has named 2 people out of 3 who are both prior select board members.
Exactly.
And Nothing wrong with that.
Band back
Yeah,
together.
so to me, my decision as a,
No drums,
as a, as a select board member is, do I want to have all three of my appointees being former select board members? That's the question mark.
That could be
No,
dangerous.
no, Bob, I'm right there with you, and I think the world of both of these candidates.
Me too, me too.
But I have spoken, and this is merely just speaking with Lowry, and I like the way that Lowry thinks about things like this, documents, and I like the way that he examines things, and I really have a lot of respect for Karen. She's done a lot, but she also is a select board member that served alongside Deb and does, and John, and there's sort of, I mean, I think we actually have four.
Oh, from the same select board, too.
Yeah, from the same select board. And so
Planning this.
I would, personally, I would be very in favor of Lowry, and I'm thrilled that both of them want to be involved, but I'm in favor of Lowry.
Probably, there also is another option, naming one and making one ex officio.
Oh, that old chestnut.
Or an
I
alternate.
prefer not to complicate it and just.
I just wanted to lay it out there. We've done it before. This is only 9 members can
I
vote.
think that the one that doesn't get chosen will feel offense or relief.
Hey,
They've probably forgotten.
I think so.
Lowry has not.
I completely agree with Jenna. I had the same thought. And I mean, the reality is we have to choose somebody. They're both great.
They're phenomenal, and we're lucky that they both.
One thing to look at, Karen's application came in before Lowry's did, just a couple days, but there's always that.
Maybe he put more thought into it, so it took him longer.
Do I hear a
I
motion?
was there for,
Do I hear a motion?
I would motion that we appoint Lowry Sargent to the Charter Commission.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? All right, boy, you got past that one, only took 3 months.
Wow. He'll be happy that we were so efficient.
Couple of, well, nothing's quick.
One other thing in Lowry's favor, because he was such a big part of the.
Planning board, yeah.
writes really
Planning
well
board,
also.
He does.
The
He does.
master plan.
Charter, no, the comprehensive plan.
Comprehensive plan.
Comprehensive plan,
He's
yeah.
a really great analytical thinker. I personally, it's been my experience.
All right, item 12 is to the select board to authorize, I believe it's Audra, to respond to the town of Lincolnville's
Special helper.
correspondence, sorry, dams. This backdrop here is there was a,
I guess I get to choose them as I see fit.
isn't that, did I state that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and because Lincolnville's letter was from
David Barrows.
a select board member who was authorized by the select board to write the letter that he didn't write.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yes.
cool. No, that's no big deal. But we just thought, I think it should be a letter from the town manager to whomever it's supposed to go to, responding to that.
Right,
letter.
and just to be transparent, I will be asking Allison McKellar for help in
I
developing this
think that's
response.
brilliant.
The thing about the dams, I don't know.
Yeah, me either.
There might be someone else. No, I think that's great.
Do you need a motion to support that authorization?
I think we do.
All right.
So moved.
Second.
Ooh, discussion. All in favor? 5-0. Ooh, it's getting fun. Now, the last item of order, sure.
There's another one?
Yeah,
May-
last one.
It needs to be in the minutes, too, that Audra's plans on.
Right. We
Chosen
have
Allison
to,
as my special help.
One of these calendar roulette things we've got to do now?
yeah, calendar roulette for 3 items.
Can I, before we get into the ordinance policy priorities, I'm thinking maybe we don't schedule a workshop for this because Jeremy and I were talking about timing for ordinance development and really to have something on the ballot for November, like particularly like, a zoning ordinance amendment, we would have to have started already, with all the public hearings for the planning board, and the select board would have to have your public hearings by the 20th of August. So we just don't have time to put any zoning ordinance amendments on the November ballot.
No zoning, but.
Zoning.
Right. Do we want to have a session to talk about non-zoning amendments that we may not get in place? Like harbor barges, like, well.
Marijuana licensing.
Yeah. Well, license.
No,
we-
Oh, the cultivation
The
license.
cultivation one, yeah.
Yeah.
We could have or I think we should have a discussion about policy versus ordinance at some point. Is it crucial? I don't know. I mean, having 3, we did do the infant flu thing and we got to do EMS. Probably the first one we should do is EMS.
Yeah, I don't think we need an ordinance workshop. That's more like if the staff and.
Right.
And whoever else wants to talk to them decide, oh, there's this ordinance that we should bring forward, that'll happen, and whoever wants to be involved with it can be, but we don't all need to sit around and talk about what a marijuana permit would look like.
I agree with that. Yeah, I was thinking more of a discussion about, we have the option sometimes of doing policies, we've done it, select boards have done it forever, have that discussion, but also, is there anything that we really want to get done by November, which doesn't require going through planning? Like,
I would say with the exception of the marijuana cultivation licensing, and what was the other one we talked, like the barges, if you want to talk about the
I mean,
barges.
I kind of do.
It's really hard to think of anything though right now. It's just not, we're not doing our best thinking, or I'm not at this hour.
Well, let's schedule the workshops. Let's schedule the workshop in one case, the discussion. It's not a workshop. But the EMS one first, that's got to come. We
that's
got a short
important.
fuse there. And that should be this month. Right?
Sounds good.
I would like to do it this month.
The week of the 22nd.
Let me take a look.
I'm around all month in July. We have lots of work going on
All
at
right.
the house.
So now that I've said that,
Are you,
23rd works for me, 25th works for me.
23rd is a select board day.
Right.
How about
29, 30,
how about the
31.
morning, the 24th work for you?
No, I'm working.
About,
I work 24, 26.
25th works for me also.
That's good.
20,
Does the 24th.
25th, what time of day?
Anytime.
Anytime.
25, yeah, Thursdays are a good day.
I can't remember. I don't know if I'll
9:30?
be there or not, but
All right.
Oh, 25th, I'm
I
out of
trust you
town.
guys.
All
You
right.
guys know
Why
more
don't
than
we,
I do.
what's you say?
I have to go to memorial service out of town on the 25th, 26th, 27th.
What about the 30th? Is that too late? Tuesday, the 30th? Or Monday, the 29th even?
Monday, the 29th.
I have an awful thing to
Monday,
do
the
that day.
29th in the morning.
I can do that. As long as everyone else.
Why don't we schedule it for?
That's when the date is for my sister's
9:30 in the
court,
morning work?
for the,
Yeah, no, this is a non-negotiable.
What's
I mean,
that?
I just will definitely not be there if it's then, but
Yeah.
I don't really care about
What
it.
day?
I mean, I care, I just trust you guys to handle
How
it for me.
about the 30th? Is there a problem with the 30th?
Not that I
No.
can think of.
Yeah, I mean, we
30th's
can,
fine with me.
we can,
I would be happy to do
30th is
that.
good.
All right, the 30th at 9:30.
Okay.
EMS, I can't even spell it now. EMS.
You can too spell it, Bob. We have trouble.
9:30, okay.
Sound it out.
Sound it out.
9:30 a.m.
AM, not PM.
What about the interfluvy thing?
Oh, let's elevate it a little bit with our,
Earlier, later?
no, so this is a big deal, so it's gonna be, it's with, did you get any?
I didn't get I threw out a bunch of dates,
We did?
not a bunch, a few. Let's see what I have.
I would hope that this one could be an evening one, so that,
25th, 29th, or 30th is what I gave.
Evening of the 29th.
that's the date.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
bad-
court
that's
thing.
bad for Allison, no?
it is, because, yeah, that's
What were the
when,
other dates?
yeah.
5th?
In
And what was the other
Just
one?
did the 30th.
In the
And they
evening?
want to do an
Is
evening?
there any other date besides 25th?
Yeah.
25th, 29th, 30th is what I sent to them.
I think the
Get
25th.
it all done on the 30th.
Okay.
I'm just going
Yeah,
to
but
say
that, one in the
9:30,
morning, one in the evening.
Yeah,
Do you want it at night? Is that when they want it?
Yep,
At 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock?
whichever suits you all.
6 o'clock on the 30th.
25th.
well, since it's going to be, I think we should probably start at 5, a little earlier, because
All
the
right.
idea is to have the guy from Maine DMR.
I think
And
starting at
if they-
5 would be
want 4
good.
o'clock?
I just think, so that we don't run into like super duper late. and
Yeah,
not-
maybe we should do 4, I don't know.
4?
About 4 is good.
30th at 4 o'clock.
I'm an early bird. The
And
earlier
this
the
one is
better.
This was interfluve.
And the Maine Department of Marine
Not
Resources.
interflute.
fish pass, that's just easier to write.
I'm just.
Could also call it dam removal.
5 PM?
4 p.m.
4 p.m.
4 PM? Got it.
Do we want to do anything with ordinance policy or hold off?
Let's hold
As
off on
needed.
that one,
You know,
yeah.
If somebody
As
comes
needed,
up,
it's
with
like-
somebody comes up with some great proposal, then
We could probably work with Jeremy just day to day and see what we can get done of the 2 or 3 things we think are hot.
I mean, he's got so much on his plate in terms of project management of
That's-
some of
that's
our,
what I'm
and then,
concerned about,
you know,
yeah.
there's some community and economic development stuff,
Yeah,
so.
I think staff is pretty loaded right
Yeah,
now.
I mean, if we want an ordinance, then we can all write it really fast and submit it at the last minute like we always used to.
We're getting good at it.
Spirit.
The good old days.
With that said, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0. Thank you, Kendall, for hanging in.
Thank you, Kendall. You always do such a great job.